Somebody said mute. Everybody. It was me too.
I muted it. I don't know why.
Ready.
Okay. The April 14th, 2020 meeting of the Corvallis School Board will come to order at 6:39 p.m. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the first meeting that we have opened the doors to the public in 24 months, and I apologize for our slightly late start. We had expected back into the board. Can everyone who is in the board make sure we've got both your volume and your speaker muted?
Somebody has a YouTube tab open. Yep. And that's not muted. Yeah, thanks.
In the interest of public health and safety for all community members, especially for immunocompromised individuals and their families, the Corvallis School Board will continue to offer virtual options for board member and district personnel participation. Additionally, public comment is available at some meetings, both in person and virtually. Information about how to provide public comment is available on the Corvallis School District website. The board's agenda and packet for tonight, as well as a link to the district YouTube channel, are available on the school board page on the district website. Just to let all of you know who are following along with the materials, there are a few changes that you will not be able to see. For resolution number 220401, there was an edit made to remove the words Desi Americans. Other than that, the material you're looking at is the same as what we have. And also, we have pulled policy BDDH from tonight's agenda in order to allow staff to have a little bit more time to work on that and refine it. Other than those two changes, the materials that you have access to online are the same as the materials used for tonight's meeting in person. Public meetings are live streamed on the district YouTube channel, and recording is posted to the same channel, typically the day after the meeting. I'm grateful for this technology, and that makes it possible for more community members to view and participate in school board meetings, given the flexibility provided by Oregon's law. Tonight, we have Directors Adams, El Abdraba, Tomini, White Bear, and myself, Director Painter McDonald, in the boardroom in person, and Directors Baker and Jones, thank you, are excused for this evening. Due to technology limitations and conductivity issues, some of the people who are participating in the meeting tonight remotely may have their video off at some or all times. So the first meeting on our agenda, or the second meeting, the second item on our agenda, I guess, is board member reports. And just to remind everyone, we'll be raising hands using the reactions on Zoom. So if you've got a report tonight, please raise your hands using that feature. Sammy, do you have something to report?
I do have a few, and I apologize in advance. It might be a little bit long since it's been a while. I have a few things to report on. The first one is I want to pay tribute to the passing of Barbara Ross. She is a pioneer, former Oregon State Representative, Benton County Commissioner, and a school board member who served our community very well. And she passed recently on April 4th. Her service was phenomenal. People have learned from her a lot, and she made a huge difference in the future of the kids. She served as a commissioner until 86 and at 93 to 2001 as Corvallis school board member. And afterwards, she moved to the legislature from 1994 to 2000. A notable victory, according to the paper, came in the 99 session where Ross helped pass legislation enabling school districts to float local option tax levy to support their state funding. The same year, Corvallis became the first community in the state to pass such a levy. Today, I'm reflecting on her legacy and how we are asking the voters to renew our own levy this year, and how all of this work and the phenomenal work would have not been possible without the advocacy of pioneers like Barbara Ross. She's been described as significant, yet humble, powerful, persuasive voice for doing good. Was talking about how a community is only made better when people get out of their comfort zone and get involved in solving problems. I'm very grateful to have learned about the work that she's done, and we are following in her footsteps. Another update is about living champions, girls basketball winning the championship that they did recently. And I'm looking up to my right because Charlotte Patel is among that team. So I know I might have stole your thunder in your reports, but I want to say I'm very proud that Crescent Valley defeated Springfield 50-39 at Gill Coliseum recently at the 5A Oregon Girls Basketball State Championship. This is phenomenal. The work is amazing with no seniors on the roster and number 9 seeding in the 5A girls playoffs. They won the championship. This is the Raiders' second girls state title and first since 1978, second championship game since 95. Here are some highlights. In the paper, Gabby Bland and Haley Bland were playing. Their grandmother, Johnny Foxberry, was watching from the stairs. She was a member of the Crescent Valley back in 1978 state championship team. I also was impressed sitting next to a friend and her daughter, and she told me, look at Charlotte. Every time she goes to the game, she would wave at my daughter. And that wave always makes an impact. Younger girls look up to you, Charlotte, and your colleagues at Championship. You're inspiring them. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
The next update I would like to share is recently I represented the Oregon School Boards as the minority delegate to a National School Board Association convention in San Diego. And we represented Oregon at the conference where we helped introduce several amendments to the Constitution of NSBA and carried them on the floor. One of the things I'm very proud of is that NSBA now, for the first time in 80 years, have a voting seat for the councils, which is the equivalent of caucuses. And I was very proud to advocate for it after having an alliance of school board members from the Virgin Islands and the Pacific region as well. We created those coalitions that strengthened our relationships, and school board members are passionate about advocating for each other. In conclusion, and I'm looking at Sarah and Ryan, I strongly recommend that we budget that the board attends both NSBA and OSBA in future years. It's been a really great experience for me, and I was a little bit jealous because some boards, like Tiger Tualatin, sent all of their members there, or most of their members there. I think it's very good relationship building, and when you go there and see people going through the same struggles that we're going through, it's really important. Last thing I want to mention is thank you, Ryan, for offering to the Caucus of Color, OSBA Caucus of Color, that I'm the president of, to meet in their next general meeting, the first in person in 2 years at Bessie Coleman Elementary School. We just visited the elementary school. I just visited the elementary school today, and I'm really excited to have the caucus, to have the district help host the next caucus meeting, which will be on April 30th at 9 a.m. in Bessie Coleman. So I'll see you there.
Hey, Shauna.
guess I don't have to unmute myself now that I'm in the same room. I can lower my hand, but
It will
that was-
happen at some point. but-
right. So, I actually was just gonna share, Sammy, building on that, that I had a chance to go and tour the new Bessie Coleman School during the community open house. And it was just so joyful to go and see students and children who are in my own family, who are either students now or have been in the past, and all the students who were there showing their families, their new school, and just having so much joy in the new spaces that they have available to them, showing off their library and collaborative learning spaces and the place where they'll see their future playground. So it was so fun to be a part of. And, you know, I have to share, as a former, way back in the day, Hoover Husky, when I was growing up, when I drove by and saw the demolished site, it really surprised me in the sadness that I felt too, in driving by the old school grounds and seeing that school not there anymore. And knowing that for me, that's where a lot, and I was saying to my daughter, you know, that was a lot of my memories. And it's also time to celebrate this new and beautiful school, the incredible artwork that is pictured inside, made by the children there, and just the joy that they had. Really, I think both honored some of that sadness I felt about my own memories, but seeing the future of those new memories being built too. So it's really a pleasure to be part of it.
Anyone else? No, well, moving on then, we will go to the superintendent's report.
Right. So I have a couple of slides as well as a little video to share here in just a second.
Luke's trying to get in to the Zoom. Can she be allowed in?
That made it really easy because we'll have to talk about it.
Yeah, this is no small feat.
Yeah.
Getting all the AV to line up. And I was just at a hybrid conference for OSBA and it's very, very.
So to start off tonight, I just wanted to welcome everybody back because it has been 24 months since we've been in this space together. And we were joking a little bit ago about, you know, how it felt to be back in school for the first day. And this is a meeting, but I do feel a little giddy to be able to actually be with folks and having conversations about what's going on in school in person with all of you. And after all we've been through over the last 24 months, it feels really good to be in person. So again, thanks for being here and continuing to support the work as you have throughout the pandemic. So a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. The first one is on the next slide. And it's Alicia Al-Shabawi, and she is our first Corvallis online graduate. She graduated early this year and she left to go pursue aerospace and aviation engineering. So our first student is off on her way. So again, one of those modifications we made during the pandemic to bring Corvallis online up to programs and to see someone graduate from that school, and as we'll have more graduates coming this spring. But again, I wanted to take a moment to recognize our first Corvallis Online graduate, and our graduates from Corvallis Online will also have a diploma from their home high school, recognizing that the majority of their time had been spent either at Crescent Valley or at CHS, just like our students at College Hill. So anyhow, that was an exciting first for us. Next, Brendan's going to shift us to a video to share about our Golden Apple winners for the year. So as you know, the Pastega family has supported our Golden Apple winners for a number of years. And this year, because of the connection that Sammy made with the chamber and Simon there, we were able to recognize our Golden Apple winners at Celebrate Corvallis. So those Golden Apple winners came to the event, were recognized. Thank you to the foundation for making that possible by sponsoring the table. But again, it was a way for us to recognize some incredible staff that we have who have worked tirelessly throughout this pandemic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brendan to share the video. Would you like me to keep going and then come back to it at the end?
No.
Okay. It's on our screens, but not on that. I'll keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Cool, no problems. A couple of other things I wanted to highlight, Sammy mentioned the Color Caucus coming, OSBA Color Caucus coming to Bessie Coleman for their meeting coming up. But just again, to highlight, we have a couple of other community events at our schools. Again, the last one that we did at Bessie Coleman was different in that we allowed people just to tour. And then we had staff in different locations to answer questions. We have the same plan for Garfield on April 28th from 4 to 7, and then also at Lincoln on the 26th from 4 to 7. So again, a couple of opportunities for staff and community to come and see those spaces. Because the first time, as you know, it was a sign up and they filled quickly, but we want to make sure that our community can see those spaces. Another highlight, I'll do one more and then we'll come to that. Another highlight for us has been, we're in the beginning of hiring, our key hiring season. And so that happens this month and next month as we think about the upcoming school year. And this year we had a different event than we've had in the past. We invited all of our student teachers to Adams to actually have a chance to interview principals, to talk about what they were looking for them to hear more about our school district. We do have a really great relationships with our universities, and we have a number of student teachers that come into our schools. And again, it's a great way for us to let them understand and know more about who we are while they're going through their student teaching, but also it helps us in our recruiting process for folks to, again, first understand what we're about, and secondly, to make, if that's a good fit for them, to know and have those relationships established. So that's been something that just happened a couple of weeks ago. And we have principals from all levels there to communicate and talk with those potential new teachers for us. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and we're going to watch the Golden Apple video.
Chris is a trusted, compassionate first responder for Corvallis School District students, staff, and schools. She unites our school district as well as our community to create systems of care for students and families as needed. She is accessible 24/7, which I know is true. She is generous with her time and more. She is a gem.
I'm just so honored and privileged to work with everybody here.
Nancy is a leader within our custodial department. Nancy's commitment to supporting staff and students is evident in her work. She is respected by her building staff and her department. Our school community is better because of Nancy. Kelsey's been an employee of the Corvallis School District since she was in high school. There is a reason why students seek her out. Her relationships with them are positive and kind. The Corvallis School District is a better place with Kelsey as one of our employees. Belonging, trust, safety, confidence, love, unending compassion, and humor. These are values that only begin to describe Elton Kakuta. These values are not ones that Elton strives for, like most of us do. They are part of the fabric that makes him who he is. He has touched the lives of many, and we are all grateful to know him. For a number of years, Keith has provided a supportive learning environment where our students thrive. He's especially gifted at supporting our historically marginalized students at Crescent Valley High School. He is amazing at how he individually challenges each student to do their best work, even students that are not officially enrolled in one of his classes. He personally delivered art supplies and ceramic wheels to our students so they could work from home during remote learning. He's exactly the type of educator and person that is deserving of a golden apple.
So those weren't my words, those were the words that were written about each one of those Golden Apple winners by staff that care deeply about them and recognize what they do and how they support our schools. So again, it's always a pleasure, and it was really nice to be able to go and celebrate with them at Celebrate Corvallis this year. And again, thank you to the foundation for all the work to make it happen, both in the surprise. We've done this is my 6th year superintendent. And every time it's been a surprise. We have not yet been caught by family or anyone who shows up for the event. So I'm feeling pretty lucky, and we'll keep at it that way, because again, it's those moments where kids are walking into your class. Keith, as example, Moses at CV, you know, there are a lot of people bustling around, and his classroom is really a place where kids go because it's a safe place, a comfortable place to be. And but he was still wondering why there were so many that day, and we were still able to surprise him. So again, it's a great aspect of what we're able to do to recognize staff in our community. So a couple of other highlights I wanted to share. One of them is with our food service department. So for Earth Day, they are working on a mystery lunch entree. So there'll be some clues that come out as we get closer to Earth Day. But again, it is really focused on food that comes from the earth, as well as what that means to fulfillment and health and wellness. So, so clues will be coming, and it will be, I'm sure it will be a tasty entree, but again, it's connected back to Earth Day. So there'll be information coming out about that. Summer school. So as you know, over time, the foundation has supported summer school, but for the 2nd year in a row, the legislature put funding towards summer's programming. And so we've communicated with staff, those who are interested in continuing to work over the summer, and then we'll be sending information out to families next week. So another great opportunity for us to continue. As I advocate for summer programming over time, one of the things I continue to talk about with those that will listen to me is that we need to really make sure that it's something that's year over year. So we don't find out late in the spring. We want to know year over year that if we're going to have summer programming that's supported by the legislature, that we know that, so we can begin to plan around that in an ongoing, really methodical way. So as you have a chance to talk to legislators, first, a big thank you for ongoing support. And secondly, that we want to make sure that that continues to happen, but also that we're communicated with early so we can do and put together really good programs for kids. 2 more. I have more than Sam. Student artwork. There, I just wanted to highlight that across, we always have student artwork in this space because it reminds us about the work that we do. And we have artwork from all of our elementaries and wings, our program at Crescent Valley High School for our students 18 to 21 years old. So again, new artwork, a big thank you to our teachers that make that happen, as well as the local option levy that has continued to fund our art teachers. So again, back in this space together, new art to share with all of you. Another update, just a quick one. We shared information with the community recently about this space for next school year, and this space being used as well as Western View to support College Hill. So in that, we talked a little bit about how we would be shifting and moving. So staff here has been very flexible and adaptable. This is going to be a science classroom next year. And so our board meetings. So you get a science room, and then when that's done, then we're going to get new carpet. So we will still have our superintendent and assistant superintendent communications department in this office, right in the middle of College Hill. which I'm super jazzed about. And we will also have our board meetings at Lincoln in the gym. So as we move to the next school year, and we will be having all of our board meetings at Lincoln for a year. We talked about moving around, but for staff to have one space, especially as we're using all this technology, it's important to be there, and that's where we're excited to be. So other departments, again, there's been great flexibility between our CIMC moving to Crescent Valley. We have our teaching and learning department working primarily out of classrooms at Lincoln. Our Casa Latinos Unidos will be at Garfield, as well as Marcian and our interpreters. So again, those are some of the big shifts. Business and HR will be in the Wenaha trailer. So they'll still be on site, but they'll be working out of the modular right over here. So again, that's the plan for the upcoming year. I think the two things that are great about it is that it will have all of us out amongst students, which reminds us why we do this work, and also reminds us how that work looks day in and day out. So that's, I think, the greatest highlight. And secondly, just to prioritize space for students, and we can make adjustments where we need to make adjustments and when we need to move. So that's the plan for the upcoming school year. And then finally, we're going to go back to the slides, and then just to share those students through the OSBA Promise of Oregon. We've had a lot of students across our schools recognized since we met last. So Huxley from Catherine Jones Harrison. We're just going to move through them fairly quickly. Ulysses from LP. Malu from Catherine Jones Harrison. Kelly, again from LP. Brady from Catherine Jones Harrison. Dominic from LP. Darcy from Catherine Jones Harrison. Addie from Linus Pollen. Olive from Catherine Jones Harrison. Kaylin from Catherine Jones Harrison. Avery, again from Catherine Jones Harrison. Henry from Catherine Jones Harrison. And those are our new students at Promise of Oregon. So that will continue through the remainder of the school year. And again, sharing a little bit about why they're the Promise of Oregon. And again, if you haven't had a chance to watch the video that goes along with those student stories, make sure to take a moment to watch. Sammy is one of the board members that's represented in that. So again, it's a great way for us to be able to tell a little bit more about our students with our school boards across the state of Oregon. So with that, just want to make sure I hit it all. Yeah, that's my superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. I think watching this plan for College Hill to come here has been interesting, and the best part of it has been watching how excited Ryan is to be among students. And it's really nice to have a superintendent who is that excited to have his building taken over by students. So, like it's a good sign. So next item is our student representative reports. Do you?
I can start. Okay. So CB has seen a lot of change the past month. Once the mask mandate was lifted, we've seen some students choose to take it off and some students choose to continue wearing it. But along with the mask mandate, restrictions on gatherings were lifted. So Friday, we had our annual talent show, Super Spy themed. It had record-breaking attendance, and we raised a record amount. So that is really great. And that money will go to Prom next year. So that's exciting. And looking forward, we have a spring fling in the works. It'll be our first school dance of the year. And other events like Powder Tough, which are like school-wide flag football and volleyball games, are also getting put on the schedule after being put off in the fall. So there's a lot of events happening as the school year wraps up. So it'll be a pretty fun packed end of the year. But Along with events, we're seeing a lot of clubs achieving new heights. So this past week, the robotics team had districts and placed well among Oregon's best teams. The debate team is also working really hard, and 3 CV students won state and are qualified for nationals over the summer in Kentucky. So that's very exciting. Shout out to them. And then SAM, which is our Students Advocating for Mental Health Club, just received QPR training and are working hard to spread awareness of the importance of mental health through various projects around the school and in the community. Most recently, last weekend, they helped volunteer at a out of the darkness walk on OSU for suicide prevention. And then along with clubs, sports have also been making CV proud. As Sammy said, the CV girls basketball took home the state title in mid-March, our first since 1978. So that was very exciting for the whole school. And as for spring sports, track, tennis, softball, and baseball are all having games and races with their league competitions starting soon. And big things are in their future for sure. And lastly, already kids are getting excited for next year. Forecasting for classes has been taking place these past few weeks. And also our incoming freshmen, current 8th graders, will be having their open house and introduction to CV later this month. So everyone's looking forward to the end of this year. We'll be excited.
So at the beginning of this week, Monday, we start 4th quarter, as everyone knows. And as of today, we have 40 graduates this year. And College Hill's graduation is on June 9th. So I better see all of you guys there. And we also have a College Hill Film Festival, which I'm in also. And it's coming up May 26th. And our students are filmmaking and presenting their work. And it's just like stories about growth and resilience and hope and, you know, just all kinds of stories. And it's like going to be just a very vulnerable moment, you know, and it's just like all kinds of students just, you know, opening up about something, you know, and it's just really nice, you know. You will not want to miss it for sure. The big news was going to be that our new location for next school year is going to be here in the district office. It's not good. And it, you know, may still be difficult, you know, for us to adjust, but, you know, like we do big, tough things. We'll get through it, you know, and we're excited for, you know, what's going to happen to our school, you know, so. And also the Urban Farm has begun their spring planting, and we encourage all of you guys to look forward for it as well. And it's going to be running through the spring and through the summer, and we're going to be having like experts come to the, you know, school too and show like some layering and stuff like that, and it's going to be good out. Yeah.
Where is, I'm sorry, Taylor, before you get started, where is the film festival gonna be? Is it
It's gonna be in
SCHS?
Corvallis High School.
Okay.
Yeah, in the theater.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I'm Taylor, I'm the CHS rep, and we just had our black light dance, our spring fling. It's black light themed, neon, super fun, and neon paint. So that was on April 8th. And then also the CHS leadership team had an opportunity. So like we have pen pals in the 3rd grade Lincoln class. So we had the opportunity to take a field trip over there and like create art with them. And it was super fun to meet our pen pals and see the awesome Lincoln school. Like it's beautiful in there, guys. Like totally go to the open house. Super jealous. So that was a really fun opportunity to meet the kids and be able to put some faces to the letters we were receiving. Super cute kids. And then also the CHS women's golf took a tournament win at the conference tournament at Cross Creek Golf Course. And then the CHS men's golf team placed first at a tournament at the Oregon Golf Association. So we're super proud of them. Shout out there. And then also the CHS Safe Club is working on a mural promoting racial and gender and sexual orientation equity. So we're working on a mural for that. We received the Corvallis Public School Foundation Yay grant. So we're super happy about that. So it's $2,500. Yeah, so thank you guys for that. And
They're all right there with.
oh my
big
gosh,
smiles.
yes, thank you so much. We're so happy. Like we were literally like I was jumping up and down outside my house. Like it was a big thing. And then we also collabed with our CHS bake sale team to bring in an additional $900 for our unveiling event. And so we're currently planning on painting over Memorial Weekend and then having a big unveiling event on May 30th. So it's Memorial Day. So if y'all aren't doing anything, come on down. It should be a pretty fun event. We're hoping to have t-shirts that we can hand out and it should be really fun.
What day is it?
On May 30th. Yeah, that's what we're planning for the unveiling event.
So I'm sorry, where is the mural located in the school?
So it's actually like a painted intersection. So it's on the ground next to our sophomore parking lot, which is by our softball field. So it's in the student parking lot. And it's just like, it's gonna be like 6 feet by 6 feet. Yeah, so we're super excited about that project. And our student population's excited about that. So we've been collaborating with our Saga Club also as well on the design. And so, yeah, we're gonna be painting over Memorial Weekend and everyone is super excited. We just had a meeting about it today. And then also the Green Club is doing a clothing swap next week. So we've been donating clothes all week long and then that distribution of clothes will happen next week. And also we have a blood drive tomorrow with the American Red Cross. And so we're trying to get people to sign up. I got my water. I'm getting ready to donate tomorrow, a little scared. And then we got prom is scheduled for May 14th. It's a masquerade theme. And we have our prom closet running. So students can bring in like old prom clothes. And then students who would like to take something from the prom closet can take that as well. Super cool event. And so we got a couple pieces in there for people to choose from. And then we're also currently working on a drive-in movie event that will be at the fairgrounds. It was supposed to be tomorrow, but it got postponed because of weather. But we've been doing a coin war for that and a dine out at Papa's Pizza. So I'm predicting there's going to be more fundraisers. So we'd love it if y'all could help us support and raise money for that because that's going to be a super fun event. And also we're working on getting urinal dividers for the men's bathroom because apparently I didn't realize that we didn't have those, but yeah, so we're working on those. I was like, dang, someone brought up an ASB and I was like, I didn't realize that wasn't a thing. So we're working on that right now. And then, yeah, that's my report.
Does anyone have any questions first? I just want to say how good it is to see you. And to hear, like, it just sounds like hearing about how busy everything is, it sounds like what high school is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
And it feels good. So thank you for sharing. And I'm so glad. So the next item on our agenda is public comment. The complete guidelines for public comment are available on the table outside the meeting room and on the board's website. I will share a few important points with you now. When it's your turn to speak, please come forward and have a seat, state your name, and direct your comments to the board. As a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. There are lights here, and when the yellow light comes on, you have 30 seconds of your time remaining, and the red light shows that your time is up. For anyone who's making public comments remotely, I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and then when your time is up. Following your comments, the board will have 3 minutes to ask clarifying questions. Before you start your comment, please state your name for the record and state whether you reside within the school district boundary.
So we have several that are here in person. Did the one gentleman, Brandon, call in? Okay, good. So I figured we do one in person, then one online, and then go from there. So Alexis McCoy.
Freezing over there. Like AC or something. All right. So my name is Alexis McClellan and I do reside in Corvallis. All right. Okay, sweet. So I just wanted to say hello to everyone. I'm gonna be quick. school board members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, community members, et cetera, staff members. So today I'm going to talk about the importance of educational assistants, EAs, in our schools, and the need for higher staffing levels for EAs, more training and better pay. I'm going to kind of go quick, and I might need just a few extra seconds. So first of all, I teach at Sheldon Middle School in the science department. Currently, I'm teaching all grade levels from 0.83, so that's one class shy of full time. This is my 4th year in CSD, 11th year overall as a teacher. So between my 5 classes, I have 137 students, and 31% of those students need extra support. So 31% are either on IEP 504 or my ELLs. I simply could not do my job well without support from my EAs. I'm lucky enough to have EAs in several classes. Not everyone is lucky like that, and they make a huge difference in how much support all of my students receive from an adult. In a typical week in my classroom, my EAs do most of these. So sometimes they work with one-on-one with kids who need academic support. Sometimes they work in small groups with all levels of learners. Sometimes they work one-on-one with kids who need behavioral support. For instance, taking kids out of the classroom if they need a break to get some energy out so they can come back and try and be successful. They bounce back and forth from group to group along with me, checking in on progress, offering help. We'll often split up the class into the groups that need the most help, and we'll bounce back and forth. They help check work along with me because we do a lot of in-class checking. So checking to see for misconceptions, checking to see if students need to go deeper, et cetera. So I could not do that alone. They provide invaluable assistance in that way. Obviously explaining directions, answering questions, helping make sure kids are on iPads appropriately. Outside of my classroom, we have EAs that run our behavioral support room, which is huge and they're amazing. We have EAs that run Home Core, which is a quiet place for kids who need extra time. And they provide supervision before, during, and after school at lunch, and one-on-ones where EAs are one-on-one with kids. So the support my EAs give to our students and to me as a person and teacher basically makes our classroom work, or my classroom work. We have a huge diverse group of learners. As you know, we have tons of students that are navigating trauma, kids with high levels of anxiety and depression, students suffering negative consequences from social media. Everyone's coming back from COVID, and that has been a mess at times. So we need more highly trained EAs in our classrooms to meet all of these needs. And we're lucky enough to have really amazing EAs in our schools, but we desperately need more. And we also need to diversify our EA workforce. So as we enter into the budget season, I cannot stress enough how important it is, how EAs are super, super, super important, both for student success and for reducing teacher burnout. Smaller class sizes would be great, but if I had a choice, I would choose a highly skilled EA over a smaller class any day. We also need to pay our EAs more. They work with students who need the most support, and they don't always get as much positive feedback as they deserve. We cannot lose highly skilled EAs. I already know of one who's looking for a different job in the district because it pays $3 more an hour, and that's huge for them. So I realize 85% of our budget goes to paying staff in our district. That's a large amount, but investing in highly skilled EAs and providing them with the training they need is one of the smartest investments we can make. That's probably, staff is the smartest investment we can make, in my opinion. So that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I really, really wanted to come to you in person and let you know.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
So Troy Bryant
Okay.
is going to join us.
Troy, can you hear? Are you there? You might need to unmute yourself. Yes, Troy, you're muted.
There we go. It's good.
So, Troy, did you hear my information about how to provide testimony?
You know what, I did not, but I think I have the sheet up here so I can respond accordingly. I do live within the district, and my name is Troy Brandt.
Okay, just quickly so you know, you have 3 minutes to testify. I will give you a warning when you have 30 seconds remaining, and then I will let you know when your time is up. Then following your comments, we will have 3 minutes in which the board can ask clarifying questions if they wish. And with that, why don't you go ahead and begin your testimony.
Okay, great. Dear Board Chair Farron McDonald and the Corvallis School Board members, on behalf of the Franklin School PTA, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the Franklin School air quality research that Franklin School parents have undertaken over the last 2 weeks. Our research is in response to degraded air quality that primarily occurred in the Franklin School building the week of March 28th, but continued into the week of April 4th. The degraded air quality is associated with the removal of vinyl asbestos tiles in the Franklin School building. While we appreciate the air quality monitoring district staff have overseen since April 3rd, a full accounting of the chemicals that were used by contractors to remove the asbestos tile adhesive, the predicted exposure levels, and the exposure thresholds associated with the chemicals have not been provided to concerned Franklin School parents. Based on our research, we understand the following information. The Safeguard low odor product, which was used to remove the tiles, is manufactured by Sentinel Products and resold through inline distributing. Net Compliance, which is the tile removal contractor, purchased the Safeguard low odor product from inline distributing. Sentinel Products reformulated the Safeguard low odor product in early 2021 by replacing one ingredient with a less toxic one. As a Sentinel product sales manager stated, quote, Sentinel has gotten rid of the 2-butadiethanol out of its formulas due to health concerns and because it is a higher VOC component, end quote. The time-weighted average exposure limits established by the ACGIH for the replacement ingredient is 10 parts per million. The time-weighted average exposure limits for the previous chemical was 5 parts per million. The district has continued to use 50 parts per million as an exposure reference. We do not know if Net Compliance was using the old or the new formulation. We are requesting the following actions. We would like the district to follow up with Net Compliance and complete an audit of the solvent and any other chemicals that were used for the work. We are requesting a response from Sean Grabner, the industrial hygienist with PBS Engineering and Environmental, regarding why a VOC test was not completed by March 30th when it was clear a fume was present in the school building. We are requesting the district post the school-specific health and safety plan to either the district's or the Franklin Schools website so that the document is publicly available for future construction. As I have requested of district leadership, communication and accountability must improve between the district leadership, contractors, school administration, staff, and parents. Exposing our teachers, staff, and students to unknown chemicals and then not taking appropriate measures to understand the exposure is unacceptable and should not require parents to uncover the health risks our students were exposed to. I'm hopeful that this incident will be a learning opportunity for all involved. I also appreciate the district's invitation today to have the Franklin PTA participate in a construction planning meeting this coming Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Troy?
Okay.
No, okay, thank you.
Next person, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Rigel or Rigel?
Got it right, Rigel?
Rigel?
Rigel.
Rigel.
Is the start.
And I passed Rigel's comments back.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'm Jasmine Woodside. I do live in the district and I have 3 children in school here at Franklin School. So I'm here speaking today about the incident that Troy just spoke to. Since you described the incident a little bit and I have it counting here, I won't recount that. You go ahead and jump along to some key findings, I think, that I want to highlight here. Number 1, that job of asbestos removal in that hallway should never have happened over spring break. It should not have happened. It's a high-risk construction activity because the students were literally coming into it after spring break. And in that unfinished construction area where solvent had been put down in a hallway that has no HVAC connection and no ventilation. The proper hazard analysis would identify that and never allowed that work to go forward. And I know something about this. If you have to do the timing of the construction, then the contractor could have used a better product. They used the cheap product instead of using the products that have lower VOC. If they would have done that, there would have been no problem. Kids wouldn't have got sick. Number 2, the school district does not seem to know what chemicals were used and what appropriate standards to apply in schools. The school says 50 parts per million, but it turns out that's either a fabrication or mistake, because the chemical says nothing about that. It has the 10 parts per million like Troy mentioned. It does not currently have an OSHA limit because they haven't studied it enough. Every VOC actually has a different OSHA limit, but that's not even the right standard to apply. That's for factory workers. Our children are not factory workers. OSHA has a different manual. That's for standards for air quality in institutional buildings. That's the one we need to look at. And that it clearly says VOCs are pollutant and you don't want them. District school needs to be 0 VOCs. Number 3, the response following the reporting of people being sick was inadequate. The safety data sheet for the chemical clearly says what the symptoms are, and that's exactly what people had. Headaches, scratchy throats, and you can read it, it's all right there. It also says what to do. It says go to fresh air. It doesn't say bring in bigger fans and try to blow it out. That's just not how you do it. That's not standard practice anywhere, even in industry. You can read a bottle, you probably have it in your cabinet. It says go to fresh air. It's like go get your fans. So that's not the right response. I want to say that we're fortunate it wasn't worse. This is a category 1 inhalant. That's the highest category in safety data sheet. That can literally kill people. Now that would normally never happen in this product. We said it doesn't happen when you put it on the floor, but that could happen. This is a porous concrete ground. It wasn't a novel condition. So I think this is very predictable what happened. In addition, that unfinished concrete floor likely still has residual asbestos in it. Yet despite that, and knowing it's still outgassing, according to the data that the school is providing us, we can see it's still going down. They're having students eat lunch on the floor in there because they can't eat in the cafeteria on a table because of COVID. That doesn't make any sense. That's not a good assessment of risk. We need leadership in that school that understands risk and how to make hard decisions when we need them done. So I encourage the school to correct the misinformation that was sent out to parents, investigate this further, and please contact us if you want to help to figure out what's going on. I'm not sure if we're getting all the information we need from the district right now. But we certainly need to improve our safety systems to not let this happen. Like I said, there's hazard analysis, there's things that will identify this before they happen, so you can prevent incidents. Thank you. That's all. Sorry to be less than happy with testimony, but it has affected us quite a bit.
Does anyone have any questions for Brenda? Oh, we didn't get a copy of this.
They probably ended down there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, next person, Jen Stoll, or John Stoll, excuse me.
My name is Jonathan Stoll. I do live in the Corvallis School District. I have 2 children who attend Franklin School in 1st and 3rd grade. I often tell them that questions are more important than the answer. That's why I encourage my children to think critically and ask questions. With questions, I expect answers. And it's very disheartening that our questions have not been met with answers. I also teach my children to take responsibility for their actions. They make mistakes. I make mistakes. We acknowledge our mistakes. We try to do better, but we acknowledge the mistakes that we make. So I have many questions. I want answers. I have a lot of concerns. I demand accountability. Why were so many parents not informed about an asbestos floor removal project? Was it a smart idea to do this during spring break? That's one thing I have an answer for. Unequivocally, as you just heard, the answer was no. But I'll give those responsible for this decision the benefit of the doubt. I make mistakes. My children make mistakes. But why then, when an odor was detected on Monday, March 28th, was I not notified? Why on Tuesday, March 29th, were parents not notified? Why on Wednesday, March 30th, were we still not notified? Why was I notified at the end of the week, not by the school principal or the district administration, but by my daughter's teacher who was suffering symptoms? A teacher who was so concerned about the conditions of the hallway that she did a rapid assessment among the children to see how everyone was feeling. A teacher who went above and beyond the call of duty. And still, after hearing from Franklin parents, the school leadership in this district wanted to throw salt on the wounds, and inquiries explaining that pollen levels were very high the week of the strong odor. without any acknowledgement that this very well may have had to do and resulted from the asbestos project that, again, we were not informed about. I don't, unlike Rigel, have the scientific background. I didn't do the research. It's disheartening to think that parents had to do this research and uncover what was happening. I think you shouldn't be alarmed as we are. What I do know is there was an odor. My kids got sick. My kids stayed home for a week because we had no confidence or reassurance that they were going to be safe at Franklin School. Why was there no communication from leadership? Why has there been no acknowledgement that there has been a failure to effectively communicate? Why has there been no acknowledgement that there were staff members and students complaining of a strong odor throughout the school? And not only did you not acknowledge it, you tried to ignore it. You did this by turning your backs on us, backs on these children. How will this district regain the trust of parents who have lost complete trust in the Franklin School to prioritize the health and well-being of our children? What measures will be taken to ensure transparency and effective communication and to restore trust in this school and this school district? And let me be clear that I recognize many of you on the school board may be hearing about these concerns for the first time. My disconsent is not directed to you. Our questions have not been answered, and so we've been left with no choice but to escalate our concerns so that we may get some answers and accountability. Why are middle school kids eating in a hallway where concrete floors just had asbestos removed from them? How is the district and their contractors going to learn from this incident and respond accordingly? Why didn't the district think it was important to post a list of potential chemicals and irritants that could impact staff and students occupying the school building just after the construction project was done and the doors and windows were left closed for days? Why is the PTA president and Franklin parents pouring in hours of time and research to uncover the many mistakes with this asbestos removal project?
I'm sorry, but your time is.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you want to leave that?
Sure.
If you give it to me, I'll give it to them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Wait, we have one question.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Did you have any other points that you didn't get to make that were in your letter?
No, that was pretty much the end of it.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
What do we have?
All right. Next is Jasmine Woodside.
My name is Jasmine Woodside. I live in the school district. I'm the parent of 8th, 6th, and 5th grade students at Franklin. First found out about the effect of the Franklin school floor removal was having on kids the Tuesday after spring break. I picked up the kids. They announced that 3 of their close friends had gone home sick. This was alarming, mostly because of COVID. 3 kids to go home in one day is a lot. That never happens. Kids usually get sick in a chain, not at all at the same time. They began to tell me about the terrible odor. All 3 of my children complained of headaches, one of which lasted for 4 days. During that week, many parents were asking questions among themselves about what was going on. Many didn't know about the construction. Many didn't know specifically about asbestos in the floors, but we were hearing of symptoms in pretty much all of the grade levels. I called the DEQ representative in charge of the permits for asbestos removal, Dottie Boyd. She understood my concern, even though we both noted that the symptoms being experienced by students were probably not from asbestos. They were most likely the result of the solvents being used to remove the tile from the concrete. She became most alarmed when I informed her that the intent was to grind, sand, and finish the remaining concrete. After contacting the contractor who held the permit, she called me back to let me know that the company had done surface testing for asbestos, but only on the dark spots left on the concrete. All spots were free of asbestos except for one, which showed trace amounts of asbestos. This is acceptable to DEQ, but is it acceptable to us with the building, with our kids in the building? My next experience was when I found out on Monday, April 11th, that middle school students were sent into the hallway to eat lunch sitting on these floors. I was in shock, but unfortunately I was not surprised. I called Mr. Harlow, the principal, that day and asked what his plan was for the rest of the week. He said he had no plan. He blamed the students not wanting to eat outside. He blamed teachers' union contracts and having no separate cafeteria space from the gym. In fact, he had the kids eat in the hallway again on Tuesday, April 12th, and spend their first break in the hallways as well. This response is very concerning to me. I understand COVID has been hard on children, families, teachers, everyone. But for months, our elementary school kids ate on the floors in the gym instead of at tables. And while tables have finally returned once the mask mandate lifted, middle school continues to eat outside with no covering besides small structures on cold concrete, asphalt or grass. Also on Monday, April 11th, I had left a message with Kim Patton's office with my concerns. And upon hearing that no changes were made based on me talking to our principal, I called back on Tuesday. This time, Kim's office returned my phone call to let me know that the measures that were being taken for safety. She began to tell me that students were no longer allowed to access the hallways, just like in COVID. I was shocked because I expressed to her that they were eating on the floor. They were also shocked. On Wednesday, which was yesterday, students were finally allowed to eat in the classrooms at their desk. These events after spring break is a testimony that we need immediate change at Franklin School, change the leadership. We need effective leadership with better risk assessment abilities in an aging building with construction on site and young children all around. We need someone in the school who can make the hard decisions to direct the school in a way that maintains a safe environment for staff and students. We need trust. We need to reestablish trust among parents with this administration, both at Franklin School and in the school district. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question?
I provided written copy for all of you guys.
Next is Heidi Anderson.
So my name is Heidi Anderson and I live in the Corvallis district. I'm here this evening to voice concerns about the asbestos abatement project that occurred at Franklin during spring break. As a parent of children that attend Franklin School, I quickly learned that parental involvement at Franklin is one of its biggest assets. We love the school community and the dedication of the teachers to educate our children. It is a special place. It is through this care and dedication to students that I learned about the odor in the Franklin hallway. On April 1st, 2022, when I picked up my student from school, her teacher came up to me with a hoarse voice and said she was very concerned about a smell in the hallways. She and some of the students were feeling sick with symptoms such as nausea, headaches, dizziness, and sore throats from the odor. In an email she sent later that day, she noted that 18 of 30 kids said they were experiencing symptoms. This obviously made me very concerned. What exactly were the staff and students exposed to? Naturally, parents began connecting with one another, trying to figure out what was happening. Parents emailed the district and principal on Friday, April 1st. If it weren't for parents at Franklin School, the leadership of the school and the district would not have ventilated the hallways on Sunday, April 3rd, and there would have been no testing of VOC levels. It should only take a quick phone call to find out what products were used during the project and how they can impact children. But alas, this has been anything but easy. The majority of the information about the Safeguard low odor products has come from Franklin parents actively sending emails to the principal, the school districts, toxicologists, chemical manufacturers, DEQ, EPA, engineers, you name it, to get to the bottom of what our children and the school staff were exposed to. This should not be a parent's job. The district should be held accountable for finding these answers. We expect more from the school district. The district needs better transparency with their bond projects and better communication with families and caregivers. If there are concerning smells in the school with children inside, let parents know so they can pick their children up. If testing is being done, let parents know what the testing is and the results. We have the right to know our children are safe and to understand if their health is negatively impacted by a product used in their school. Safety protocols need to be followed. The district told parents that children and staff are not using the hallways this week, yet middle schoolers ate in the hallway and all grades use the hallways during transitions rather than outside doors. Trust has been broken with the district and the school leadership. Students and parents are still anxious about the building's condition. I still detected a smell present in the hallways from my visit to Franklin this afternoon. What is the district going to do about the hallways at Franklin? Is there something that can fix the floors so they no longer off-gas? Could they be sealed and finished? Will ventilation fans be running until the end of the school year? Will they be cleaning the floor each week? Will VOC testing continue? Will the floor be finished and sealed? Are the children and staff expected to use outside doors the rest of the school year? What is the plan? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Next person is Matilda.
Hello, my name is Matilda Talent, live in the Corvallis School District boundaries. I'm here with the same concerns that all the other Franklin parents had here today. I'm here as a concerned parent. I have two daughters that go to Franklin School, one's in first grade, one's in fourth grade. Both experienced symptoms. I was not notified until Friday, not from the school, like others said, but from an email that was forwarded from a third grade teacher expressing her concerns in the high fumes. My kids did experience symptoms. I had attributed to allergies, even though one of them never had symptoms of allergies. But now I was able to replay it, and I, just thinking back to it, they were short term, and I reached out to the school, and the feedback I got did not make me feel like my kids were going to be safe at school. That the levels there, what was going on there, they didn't have a clear indication of what was going on. So my kids did not return to school that following week at all. I'm in shock that we were not notified. These high fumes of the school, didn't even know, none of us were notified. We didn't have the opportunity to say we're okay with our kids going to school or not. Sorry, I didn't prepare anything like everybody else. I contacted the school several times. I went to the school twice. That week I flew my kids out, and I still smelled the fume. I got approached by staff members telling me, I'm glad you have your kids at home. And them also telling me their symptoms and their worries, and that they contacted the principal, and he took very little action, unfortunately. I'm still super concerned. The fact that the school is so old and it has its faults, and the cracks and the holes that we can't predict with future construction, what other variables are going to come up. Our kids should not be in the middle of a construction site. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
And that's everything.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming and testifying. We are very grateful to hear from the community about what they're experiencing. And we're also very grateful to have you here in the room with us. That's an important thing. So the next item on our agenda is the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation work session. So this is a time when the boards of the Corvallis School District and the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation come together to work and align our efforts to provide our kids with the quality education we expect. So if you all want to come up and make sure everyone gets logged on to Zoom.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
May the board stand at ease for 5 minutes while
Yes.
my colleagues get settled?
Yeah.
Okay, so we recess for 5 minutes while everyone gets logged on.
I actually got the email before. Yeah.
Sarah? I was. Oh, never mind. Yeah.
So you all have this.
So you're also doing CB's. You guys are? I found out that CB's actually figured it out. So it's and then we have a native artist. So are you guys having students?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're having. So like. Okay, her name is Elena Ramirez. Are you guys it'll be you want a good detail, yeah, so it's not like disrespectful. Yeah. So we're talking about, we're like, none of us had to do girls, so we got to do it to get back. But it should be pretty simple, it's just like, you really just need the outline. And it's really, it's not so big. Like, I just like was stopping sports and I just like wanted to do it work. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, yeah.
the Corvallis Public School Boards Foundation. So twice a year, we come together with, as the two boards to work to align our two boards in our efforts.
Yeah, so there is a slide deck that.
Somebody is not muted.
I know, I can't figure out how to do it.
Sorry, we just added, as far as I can see, a number of more people, so we're having more pickups. So please bear with us for a moment.
Oh, yes, yes. I apologize. I'll have to turn off my camera for a while. My fast breaking starts now, and I better not even touch the camera. So thanks for your patience with me.
No.
All set. We decided we would add all this technology so that we could come back in person and we would invite our friends. So we decided if we're going to do it, we might as well just pull off the Band-Aid and go for it. So thank you for joining us tonight and participating with us. The opportunity to spend an hour together like we do twice a year is super valuable. Thank you to Ashley and to Lee for helping to coordinate along with Sarah. Again, this is an important time for us to get together and to be able to unite our boards and the shared vision and mission of supporting the kids of Corvallis. So thanks for joining us for that. And so if Brendan, if you want to go ahead and pull up the slide deck, that would be great. And I know we all have individual slides and aspects that we're going to be talking about. The first one is just a recap of our last meeting and what we covered. I know that each time different members of your group come. So I think it would be valuable if we had the chance just for everybody to introduce themselves. I know we have nameplates, but because we don't come together somewhat infrequently, I think that would be great. So Nina, would you mind going first?
Yeah, my name is Nina Ehrlich Williams, and I live in the district, and I have a child at Midas Calling and a child at CHS.
My name is Glenda Rice. I also live in the district. All three of my children went to the school systems. And I work in the school district with student teachers who must not remember.
My name is Leif Gifford. I'm the Executive Director of the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation since 2015, and I also have 2 children in the district.
I'm Ashley Chavez. I have been on the Corvallis Public School Foundation board for almost 5 years now. I've been chair for the past 2, and I have a 3rd grader at Bessie Pullman. And I just want to mention too, because we've got some trustees online as well.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Kevin Dougherty. Been a trustee here for almost 3 years, I believe. I do not live in the school district. I do not have any kids in the district either.
Hi, I'm Angela Hibbard, and I live in the district. I have 2 509J students, and this is my 4th-ish year on the Corvallis Schools Foundation board. Thank you for having me.
And then if it would be okay, we want both Frank and Gretchen to be able to introduce themselves, and they are online.
I can introduce myself. My name is Frank Oresco, and I'm the treasurer of the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation.
Gretchen, you're muted.
Gretchen, yeah, Gretchen.
Sorry, I've been posting for so long, I forgot to unmute. I'm Gretchen Morris. I've been involved in the Public Schools Foundation for quite a while, on and off. And I have 2 children, but they have gone through the Corvallis Public Schools quite a few years ago and have both turned out quite well, thanks to their great.
And then Julie doesn't have her screen on, but you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Julie Catala, and I used to work for Rain. I retired a couple of years ago, and I help out here and there with projects and filling in for things.
It was fitting that she came back tonight because she was with us 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I was a little confused. I have to, wait, you know, celebrating your return.
Yes. Kim is ill today, so.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Melissa Harder. I'm the Assistant Superintendent in Corvallis School District.
And I'm Ryan Dawson. I'm the superintendent here and in year 6.
I'm Sarah Finker McDonald. I am the chair. I am Lou, my whole name's Lou Whitebear, and I'm co-vice chair.
I'm Shauna Tommy, and I am also the vice chair, and we didn't name our kiddos.
No,
I'm in the district too,
Yeah,
but
I'm a
I also-
Linus Bowling and a CHS student. I have a Lincoln Elementary, a CHS, and a College Hill, and an extra College Hill.
And I have a daughter at Shelton.
Vince Adams, Corvallis School Board. I have 2 kids in the district, one at Lincoln, the other at Linus Pauling. And of course, I have to be a resident of the district, like all my colleagues.
Samia Dropa, school board member, and I claim them all.
I'm Charlotte. I am the school board representative for Crescent Valley. I'm Taylor Young. I'm the CHS school board rep. I got a sister at CHS and 2 brothers at Franklin.
All right. Well, again, thank you for being here tonight. So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. And again, this is a chance for us to talk a little bit and do a review of what we covered last time as we came together. Is there anything that Ashley and Sarah you'd like to share as we think about that time together, the time we had together?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick this off. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for continuing to make this time for us to attend meetings with you. It's been a pattern for a while now, and I think it's extremely valuable for both of our boards. And it's just really nice to see you in person again. It's been quite some time since we've all been together, and it's just lovely to see you. As Ryan mentioned, this is not our full board. We usually kind of have a big board. It's a lot to fit in one room. And it doesn't always make for the most productive dialogue to have this massive group of folks. So we like to kind of split the board in half, and the trustees that come in the spring and in the fall kind of change out. So the folks who were at our last meeting were, for the most part, different than who is here this evening, with the exception of yourselves. And just kind of, you know, it's nice to reflect back on that last meeting that we had. We really focused a lot on some of the initiatives that CPSF had funded, mostly focused on our racial equity policies and investments. And then just a lot of talk also just focused on how we were, I don't know if adjusting is the right word, but kind of coping with current circumstances, but really focused on how we were finding success, areas that we still needed improvement, and really thinking about how we could work together to overcome those challenges that we saw, or areas we were finding strength and that we wanted to continue that pattern. And so just like today, similarly, we'll end with sort of some discussion questions. We wrapped up thinking about what were things that we didn't really get to discuss that we wanted to make sure we made time for today. So that'll be included in our work this evening. And last time we focused our discussion on continuing our collaboration and potentially areas that still needed ongoing investment, either more investment or we were not funding at that time. So we discussed that quite a bit. And Sarah, did you have anything you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
I think Ashley did a pretty good summary. I think, I think a lot of how we ended last time was that we had both boards and the district have spent a lot of time over the previous year and a half really sort of dealing with the crisis, and that the Corvallis School Boards Foundation has played this critical role in allowing us to really support our students and families who were most vulnerable during the pandemic. And that as we sort of we sort of ended with this, we're gonna start looking forward and look towards how our two boards can come together to really serve that goal of equitable systems. That's one of the school board's goals, and sort of fit into the process we had just gone through to revise our equity policy. And yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I think one thing just to add to what's been shared thus far is that one of the areas we did talk about was that the focus on our investments related to racial equity. And so a couple of examples of that have been increasing the SAFE program to advocate for equity to our elementaries. And one of the upcoming events is for those students to do a transition to middle school to meet those SAFE coaches. So that's a great way that the work that you've done has been has come to fruition. And then also with our Grow Your Own Leaders program, you know, that a member of that group is working on an administrative credential now. So again, different areas where the work that you've done has allowed us to expand some of the things that we've been working on. So again, that's one of the pieces from the conversation. We've got an update from Marcia. I just wanted to make sure that I continue to bring you updates as well. So, all right, next slide.
Okay, so tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of how we want to structure our discussion. And like Ryan said earlier, I just want to thank everyone for sort of collaborating to come up with tonight's agenda. So we thought first we would just kind of give you some updates on CPSF and some of the notable accomplishments that we've managed to succeed in since our last meeting, and talk a little bit about some of our grants. We're also going to cover in an overview sort of way how the Board of Trustees and the school board work together with an example that I think everyone here will enjoy kind of hearing about, and give us a good picture of how we work well together and how we can continue that. And then finally, we're just going to have some actual discussion time with each other, focused on lessons learned during the pandemic. Not that it's over, but it's a really good time to stop and reflect while we can, and then just innovative strategies or collaborative opportunities that we can build upon for the future. So that's what tonight looks like.
Next slide, please. So it's really fun to be able to be in the same room with you and share a little update about organizational growth. We've stayed the course over the last 2 years, and I'm so happy to be able to say that. We are making a colossal leap in staffing starting on Monday. We're going from 1.75 FTE to 2.75 FTE for the first time. So that's very exciting. We're welcoming a development director to our team. And this means that we can just be a lot more out there and looking for opportunities to collaborate and bring in more resources, make a larger impact on students. We are also working systematically to expand our board. We're looking for applicants right now. We're looking to get to a target number of 20 board members instead of where we are now, which is 16. And part of the thinking there is that people can focus more deeply on the work of 1 or 2 committees as opposed to 2 or 3 committees, which is where we are now. And in addition to our grants and scholarships and development and finance and governance and executive committees, we're looking at adding an equity committee in the coming year so that we can make sure that we're bringing an equity lens to all of our work at the committee level as well as the organization as a whole. And then just lastly, we've done some really intentional work around expanding connections in the community with other nonprofits that are also serving students and families in different ways, and just looking for upstream opportunities to benefit kids in lots and lots of impactful ways. And I should also add to that we're looking for more and more ways to get students involved in our organization. One of the ways that we started with this year was the Yay grants, and I'm so glad to have So, yeah. Next slide, please.
So I get to talk at a kind of overview about our grants. I think other trustees will speak in a little more detail about each of these areas, but our grants largely fall in 4 areas. Continuing to support family support programs, so that looks like support for the Welcome Center. Also supporting the district's work in terms of mental health. Our Imagine grants, which are typically awarded in the fall, and this is kind of a revamp of what was our learning and enrichment grants, but these are really focused on innovation and programs that advance equity and engagement in education. And those have been successful, and if you attended the breakfast, you got to see some of those highlights, which I think people really enjoyed, kind of peeking into the classroom and seeing that impact. Our summer programs, which was mentioned earlier, that now there is state funding largely to support some of the summer work, but we felt that our role is to kind of just fill some of the gaps for summer work that is unfunded by the state. And then finally, our YAY grants, which is kind of a big highlight for us. Those grants are really student-driven. It's been so fun to review and be part of, and incredibly impressive, just the thoughtfulness that students have taken to those grants. And I think that's an area we're all really excited about, and seeing that go further.
Okay, I gotta know more about the EA grants.
It's coming, Vince. You're gonna hear more. I was just teeing it up, and now others will give you more detail.
And this slide, you can see the numbers speak for themselves. I'm pretty impressed with the numbers there. This year, we increased our investment in the family support programs. Funds were allocated to the Wellness Center, the Homeless Education and Student Opportunity of Success, or the SOS Fund. COVID relief funds from the community were also allocated to this area. We recognize the foundation's incredible important role in providing resources to students, families who are navigating poverty and homelessness, especially now that the family support team has grown to 13 people in our district-wide. We take our community providing financial support to this program seriously and hope to augment our program in the coming year. The work that is happening to feed and clothe and equip students for school, to provide resources to the families and to prevent evictions and gaps in services is important to us, and we are grateful for the dedication of our school district to meet these needs. We were also proud of the support of the mental health programming and curriculum this year. We greatly appreciate the expansion of this unique program and the work that our mental health therapists have done. So kudos to those people.
Thanks, Frank.
So in the fall of 2022, we gave out $75,000 in award to these imagination grants. Now the grants are competitive, and they were formerly known as the Learning Enrichment Grant. And the idea is to encourage innovative ideas that enhance equity, enhance student experiences in their school communities. The Imagine grant supports school board goals, especially those concerned with student achievement, equitable systems, real-world learning, health, and wellness. Now, one of my favorites is a grant that we gave to a kindergarten teacher, Maria Adams, at Letitia Parsons School. And on Tuesday, I got to spend a wonderful morning in that classroom. And the grant was called Kindergarten Wingsuits for Outdoor Investigations. It actually included suits and boots. And I got to watch these children without they fumble with everything, all put on their suits, which are quite complex. And then they put their boots on, and we all lined out and went to that magnificent garden that they have there. And this was a math lesson. And so they were doing counting, and they were counting flowers, and they were counting birds, plants that had flowers, plants that didn't, but the one that really took the cake was worms. So they had little shovels, and they were all digging, and after they had counted the worms, they then put them on the compost heap. Ms. Adams told me that all 3 kindergarten classes use this equipment. They go out every single day and they use it for a variety of subjects. So I think it really met the goals of this grant. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a wonderful morning spent there.
I think we're next slide. Kevin, okay, well, so the foundation's been investing in the district's summer school programs for a decade, but this year, because there was state funding, we focused our funding on things that the state funding could not support. And that included wellness for staff and students that were participating in summer school. And that included yoga and personal development workshops. We also supported delivering boxes of freshly grown food from Riverland Family Farms to chronically insecure, food insecure families around. We helped pay for summer field trips and community building for students in the SAFE program, which is the Students Advocating for Equity program, for those of you who don't know, although I think everybody here does know that. And then we supported curriculum development for Letitia Carson, so that the teachers there could help the students understand who their school is named after.
So the next slide, Vincent.
Yes.
This is your slide. I know, right? So if you're really interested and you want to be a part of this, you can always go back to school and apply for these grants. But
Okay.
for right now, we'll continue on. So these youth empowerment and action grants is one of our newest grants, right? It's where it allows us to direct resources towards innovative student-driven projects. And so these grants are innovative and specifically student-driven. This year, we were able to award 7 projects at $15,700. And so some of these projects, say that again, wow.
That's some real money.
Some real money. Some of these grants were celebrating Corvallis school districts of BIPOC students at $1,500. Another one was taking pride in dual immersion at Linus Pauling Middle School, and that was at $2,500. Another one was the school land acknowledgement mural at Crescent Valley High School for $2,500. And as Taylor here mentioned here very previously, and been very excited about the painted intersection project at Corvallis High School at $2,500 as well. So there you have it.
Thanks.
Yay.
I forgot the answer. That's really exciting.
It's awesome because Charlotte's involved in one of the projects.
Exactly.
And Taylor's involved in another.
So I do have to say, I appreciate how easy you made it to apply for the grants, because at first, when I was approached about applying for a grant, I was a little like, how much stuff am I having to fill out? It's gonna take away from other stuff that I'm gonna do, but it was really easy, and like the website was very clear, and so I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was a great opportunity because I worked with another student to complete the application, so it was a really good opportunity to like learn how to fill out an application for a grant. Like I'd never done that before, and so that was a really good experience, and it was fun that like I could see like there was something was happening. Like we finally got something going on that project, and that was super exciting to see that it paid off. All the filling out the paper paid off. Yeah.
On that thread, is there post reporting? Because the grant process, you apply for the grant, and then if you're lucky, you get the award, and then you should probably have some sort of reporting afterwards. Do they have to go through that process?
You don't need to simulate that much of the.
No, that's oh, very awesome. No, it's a great program. I love it.
But to your point, I will say, having had the privilege of sitting on the committee that reviewed them, I hadn't quite appreciated the sort of educational value of the process itself.
Yeah.
And there were questions that came up on our end that we had to go back to some of the applicants, and just that process itself was enriching. So that was kind of cool that just the act of the grant making was delivering against them.
And so much community development and leadership is done through philanthropy. So it's an important part of the way we help communities. So it's a cool skill to learn.
We have invited all of the student recipients though to join a Zoom call on May 17th, I think, where they're going to be able to share with trustees and with each other what their projects have been like.
There you go. That's post reporting.
Right, remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the motion, yeah.
Happy to share an invitation.
Please.
Oh, yeah,
I'd
yeah,
love
we
to
have a
sit
big
in.
calendar.
Yeah.
We'll send pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this is, when we were planning this, I've been in the middle of thinking about our levy and the levy renewal, and getting questions from the community about that. About how does the Corvallis School Board Foundation funding and the levy funding and grant funding and all that come together? And why do we need each of those pieces? And so, I sent some numbers to Leaf, but really when I was thinking about, as I sort of thought about it this afternoon some more, we have these sort of, if you think about like the school district that we want, if you think about that as a jar, and you've heard these stories, but you take a jar and then they're the big rocks that you put in. And they take up space, but there's a lot of space around them. So those big rocks that we're filling that jar of our school district with are things like the state school fund, which is 86% of our general fund that we use to fund how our schools run. And then we have sources of funding like our local option levy that are smaller rocks that can sort of fit in the spaces in between the larger pieces. And that is 10% of our funding for our school district, and it pays for 40 full-time employees. So it's affecting our class sizes. It's paying for our PE and music and art and high school athletics and CTE programs. So things that we think of really just part of what a school district is. Classes that are reasonable sizes. Some of these enrichment courses that are sort of this, what we sort of think of as the standard enrichment classes that schools have. So a really essential part of the funding for our district. And then there are grants that we get. And I think I've specifically been asked about this because previous to the pandemic, the student investment account grant came into being and the high school success grant came into being. But those, while they're smaller rocks again that can fit in those spaces and help us fill up, what those are allowed to fund are very specific. And so they play an essential role in our funding. They help us with things like our mental health program and academic achievement programs and college level programs in our high school and dropout prevention that are very specific in what they can fund. And then we have the emergency relief funds that have come to us this year. And I think that's why people are sort of thinking about grants. Well, why do you need more funding? You've got all these grants. Well, we do, but those are temporary. And they're really there to help us address the critical needs that have arisen because of the pandemic. So they're not grants that we can then use to fund teachers in classrooms and, the music teacher or whatever that we think of as the standard parts of our school day. They're there to address the needs that have arisen because of the pandemic, and they're going to go away. So we cannot rely on them to fund our school district and our general fund long term. And then, although it seems like a much smaller number, we have the funding from the Corvallis School Board Foundation. And that's like the water that gets in there and it fills in that jar. And it's really those essential pieces that sort of build the character of our district and the character of what happens in our classroom. So it's the opportunities for students to develop projects and to see a need that they can then carry out and have the experience of learning. It's the teacher who, says, we could do all this stuff if we just had resources. And it seems that the school district, with our limited funds and our funds that are allocated to specific purposes, can't do, but that build a school district that really is the school district that we want the kids of Corvallis to be attending school in and to have those experiences. And so as we think about how we work together, we have these sort of big boulders that fit together to build, just sort of fill the larger part of that jar, but really to fill in the essential character building pieces of that jar and the experiential learning and the support for families who, with things like added boxes of food, they're able to support their kids in a way that has them come to school and ready to learn. So I think that's sort of how I see us working together, and as all these sources of funding come together. You know, the district can sort of fill in the big boulders and maybe the smaller pebbles, but we really need that water to come in and fill that jar to really build a school district that is what we want. That is what we want and what we envision for our children. So that was my thing on how we work together.
Yeah. I think it's a great example, and I can, just being out and about visiting schools, I can think of lots of examples that I get to see. Recently, I was at Letitia Carson, and I wasn't playing with worms, but I was in music, and to see the keyboards that were supported through the foundation. So our levy helps us to increase the number of music teachers in our schools, and the foundation makes what they do in the classroom more meaningful and possible. So again, there's lots of ways that I can see the connection between what you all do to support our schools and what our community does and their ways of supporting. And so it's just, again, it's just a really nice dovetail that allows great things to happen.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, that helps us transition into our next slide. I think really what's important here, especially for us, is we do have our mission statement. We do have very, specific goals in what we fund. And, as stated earlier, right, it's a lot of money, and yet it's not a lot of money sometimes. So we do have to be thoughtful about where we spend those dollars. And that's really where we look to school district and school board to help us, ensure that we are directing those dollars in the places that they're needed most. And, as stated, we've got our mission statement, we want to improve graduation rates. We want to make sure we're supporting student well-being. We also want to make sure we're doing those fun things, right? I thought maybe instead of water, we would be confetti, but I like the water because it fills the cup, right? We get to do the things that bring meaning and joy to our work. But it's a group effort where, we're raising dollars, and we're telling the story to donors, but then it requires this relationship where we, as needs change, we are able to respond quickly to what you need. Because sometimes when you, I know this quite well, sometimes you create your budget at the beginning of the year and things change. And sometimes it's not very easy to change that budget. Just not how it works sometimes with transparency. So, we are here to support those, sort of needs that arise out of budget cycle, because we can be fast and flexible and adaptable and be that support. And so on that note, we're going to tell a little story about just a big success we had this past year. And I'm going to mostly turn it over to Ryan just to talk about staff well-being and retention, and how we, try to support efforts made in that direction, and how the school board played effort in that as well. So.
Absolutely. So on the next slide, again, we have spent a lot of time thinking about one back. We spent a lot of time thinking about how to address the needs of staff as we've been transitioning and moving through the pandemic. It's had a big impact on students, and it's also had a big impact on our teaching staff and staff members across the district. And so through some conversations with folks, we looked at a lot of different ways and ideas of supporting staff. And what we landed on was a couple of ideas. And they, again, it's another example of how the foundation can do things that we're not able to do with our general fund dollars. So allowing us to have meals for staff. One of the things we heard is that we're moving at a quick pace, and we haven't been together very much. And so to have those late starts at the high school level allows people to come together. And so we're doing breakfast for staff again, so that they get a chance to come together and have something to eat and spend time just kind of like learning who's on my team, who are the staff members that I'm working with. Because in big schools, as hasn't been the case through the pandemic, our early releases at our elementary schools is another place we've been able to do that. So that's been great. The other one I want to just kind of call out is pointing at Operation Snow Cone. But I was thinking about, I went to an event with my kid and recognized that when you're having a snow cone, you're kind of standing around and you're just taking a couple of minutes as it melts. And so to have times when staff again, near the end of the day, as the weather gets warmer, where I have now I have a trailer where I can bring my snow cone machine again, so we can have people just kind of come together.
I want to see pictures of Brian in the
But
snow
I
cone.
think, but again, it's the same concept. It's more than just like an ice cream bar that's gonna melt quickly. And it's not something that you have to spend a lot of time doing, but it's just a few minutes to come together, have something sweet and take a breath, right? And so those are the kinds of ideas that we're implementing right now as we think about the things that work for humans, right? It's the things that work for all of us. As you think about times in your life, those are the moments that help you to get through. We know people come to work for a lot of reasons, and one of them is for the relationships that they have. And so these ideas are meant to nourish relationships. So again, the foundation has allowed us to do it in a way that we wouldn't have been able to pull it off without the support. So again, kudos and appreciation.
And our next two slides are going to be introduced by Gretchen. Gretchen, are you there?
I'm here and we kind of something I thought we were going to have. So sorry, I wasn't quite ready.
Oh, you're muted again.
Yourself.
Gretchen, you're still muted.
In theory, you press down on the space bar, you unmute yourself, but it didn't work then. And we're going to have two questions, discussion questions to talk about, but I want to add something first about this water analogy. More than 25 years ago, when the foundation was developed, it was in response to ballot measure 5, which you may remember left nothing but money for the big boulders, nothing for the extras. And this was an opportunity to come up with support from the community for the extras. So I'm really delighted to hear these examples of how it's filling in, particularly the stuff for the support for the faculty and staff, and even particularly the snow cone machine. I'm on the finance committee and I got to be part of the discussion. Brian explained why the snow cones were such a good idea. And he convinced us all no problem. So on to our discussion question. The first one is, as you can see, I trust the screen has developed it. Excuse me a minute. What have we, school board and foundation board, what lessons have we learned about student, family, and staff needs? We've discussed the staff needs, but the family and student needs in these last 2 years were certainly more important. What have we specifically learned and what do we want to take forward? Let's hear what other people have to say.
I quickly want to jump in. It's 8:30. So if our student reps want to leave, you are absolutely welcome to leave. Sorry, I just realized.
No, it's all good. Really appreciate it. Thank you for having us, you guys.
Thanks for being
Fabulous
here.
to see you.
It was really fun. First in-person meeting. First Spanish project. See you tomorrow.
Oh, good luck.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. No, that's it. Felt like they needed to go. So just a reminder, since we have some people remote, if you want to answer the question and contribute, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. Vince.
So, members of the foundation board, you may not be aware, but I work with the Oregon School Boards Association. I'm a school board trainer in addition to sitting on the school board. because of that, I have the luxury of being able to interact with lots of boards. And in fact, I'm working with 3 boards that are doing in strategic planning processes right now. And all 3, and I've heard other boards talk about the needs that before they had not prioritized social and emotional well-being writ large, all constituencies, not just children, not just families, not just staff, everyone. Prior to that, they just had not given it adequate attention. All 3 have brought that into their plans going forward. And I hear that all over the state, that we are really, really focusing on the human experience of being in education, or just being in America today, being in the world. And so I think going forward, that is not something we're going to be able to set aside. It's just going to be front and center, at least for the next 3 to 5 years. You know, maybe something transformational will happen and we'll all be a lot more happy after that. But I think it's just something that's always going to be at the center of our attention.
Oh, Shauna.
I had a couple of thoughts. One, in terms of really effectively addressing and meeting those needs, that we really have to have the relationships, be able to hear from those ranges in all of those categories, students, families, and staff, and that's absolutely essential. Looking at how do we really hear from them, what their needs are, and that has to involve really creative ways of elevating those voices, listening to those voices, not just expecting folks to come to our table, but going to theirs as well. And a piece of that too is in building on what you were saying, Vince, around social and emotional support, is also the importance of not just, the traditional academic skills, which are important as well. And we know how challenging that's been when all of these other needs and stressors have been layered onto our society, but also the experience that staff are having toward that goal of well-being and retention. We can't ignore that. Their experience as not just for the sake of students, but for themselves as professionals in these roles. And then the same for students. The student experience in and of itself should be part of the goal of what we're all doing as a district as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with Shauna and Vince on those 2 points. And I was also thinking about not waiting for people to come express what's needed to, because sometimes people are just trying to get by. And I think that was really apparent during the pandemic. People were noticing that certain referrals weren't being made as often. And so obviously there's those needs didn't disappear. So how do you start creating mechanisms that'll proactively meet needs? And I was thinking about the food delivery thing was a big thing, and even getting technology to students and everything like that, and hotspots and all the other things that happen, and just being really proactive. And because people were so stressed out, and that's helping address something that people didn't even perhaps think about in that moment to ask the district for help with. But also, and I think that we're going to continue to do that moving forward, instead of waiting for, because I would say this often, we don't have to wait for people to come tell us they're being traumatized or there's this really deep need. We should be doing things because we know that that's there instead of waiting. And I've seen that happening now. And also for the listening part, like Shauna was saying, is not waiting for just people just to come to us, but also going to community, not only to hear the needs, but also see what's working. And so really listening to if this is not working, okay, we tried, maybe we didn't do that right, but we need to change things. So I think I think I heard Ryan say pivot, I don't know how many times in the last couple of years, but switching things and being able to change things because they may or not be working how they were intended to. And I think that adaptability that we've seen over the last couple of years on how to switch and meet those needs better by listening to community has been something that I think we're going to continue to take forward to on between both boards.
Ashley?
Yeah, well, when you were talking, you really sparked a thought for me, and that's absolutely we need to be doing that. And I think the people who tend to mostly hear that is on this side of the table. And so the past couple of years, I really feel like we have strengthened and deepened our relationship together, and it's been fantastic. And I think we've been able to do a lot more. And so continuing that and continuing to grow it, not just maintaining status, but even more work, because as you hear those needs or think of them, right? Like you said, we don't need to wait for it to happen. But a lot of times we don't have the same connection that you do. We have the connection to donors, and we are trying to increase our connection. Like the Gay Grants is a good example of trying to make more connections with students. And now that things are a little bit more in person, we can connect a little bit more in our schools than we have been able to the past 2 years. But really, I just want to emphasize how important the partnership is, to hear from both sides, because it's so meaningful in what we can do and what steps we take forward. So
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of following on what everyone else has said, but I've been struck over the last couple of years at how different the world is to kids growing up right now than it was when I was growing up, and how different the school environment is for students and teachers who are in that environment now than it was when I was growing up. And so I think it makes this listening and being willing to recognize that, oh, we thought this was the solution you needed, but I base that on my experience, and what the world feels like now is very different. And so this, being willing to listen, being able to change, I think is really essential, because the school and the world is not the same for the kids who are there right now as it was for us, you know, 40 odd years ago. So, yeah. Anything else? Oh, look, go ahead, John.
The way that I had sparks from each of what everyone else shared, that like, oh, one more thing that came to my mind, but I didn't want to jump anyone else wanted to share. It's just that something for us all to hold on to also is that with the start of the pandemic, we very quickly saw that things that we thought previously were impossible became possible. And so the idea that it would have been impossible to send home a tablet with every single child, or that, you know, that wasn't even a thought. And all of a sudden, within a very short period of time, school buses were dropping off supplies at the doors of every child. We're looking at bringing food to families, or finding ways to really meet needs in ways that were more inclusive and more equitable than ever before. And with some of the calls to return to normalcy, I think some of what can be lost is also that mentality of going back to having the same barriers we had before to change, to creativity, to really and truly meeting the needs of all the children and staff and families. So that thought of knowing that anything is possible, and we can hold on to that. And that call to return to normalcy, I think it's more about just wanting to know what's expected, or wanting to have routine, or wanting to feel safety, rather than having continual changes, but carrying with us that knowledge that we can do anything. We're really creative and thinking about barriers in different ways.
Joan, I really appreciate that comment. And I think it's, the pandemic drew into clear contrast the need. We became acutely aware of the need, and it forced us to be focused. And I think that is the lesson we learned here, is that whatever we place, our attention on, that we're able to create dramatic change very quickly. I mean, and the food deliveries is such an amazing example of, I mean, once the need was surfaced, it was literally on the order of hours before there was response in the field. It was just really remarkable. And so I just think it's really emblematic. I don't want to go back to normal, because normal seems like we were, I don't want to say complacent. We were responsive, but I think the district, the foundation, you guys have been so responsive during the pandemic. And I don't want to go back to what we were doing before. I think we need to, I don't want to be in crisis mode, but
Thank you.
But I completely agree. I completely agree with you that I think we need to hold on to that knowledge that when we want to get stuff done, we can get it done right now and make it happen.
If you don't mind, Shauna, I really appreciated what you shared. I think it's a paradigm shift that took place when the pandemic hit for many of us, if not all of us. And more specifically, I agree about the normal, how I call it a new normal of what we are setting. But I think it was more so from a standpoint when the pandemic hit, we saw the need or determined ways in which we can say yes, as opposed to always determining why we can't do this or why we can't do that. And we were absolutely forced to figure out ways to say yes and then figure out the how later on. Prior to the pandemic, it was all right, we can't do this, or we probably shouldn't do that, or determining these barriers that were in play and then trying to work through all that, then maybe it would be a yes, right? And so that's why I say it's a paradigm shift, because now we saw that it absolutely can happen. It should be happening, and it should now become a part of the paradigm moving forward, not going back to what was. Right. Going back to what was is what creates the systemic barriers that have always been in place for centuries, right? And so now we have an opportunity to, how do we focus on yes? How do we look at this from a success standpoint as opposed to a deficit standpoint? And I think that's one step that you take in looking at it from a, how do we say yes first, as opposed to automatically thinking there's probably going to be some barriers here. So how do we get ourselves out of the way of being contributing to some of those barriers, right? And how do we say yes? So that's what I picked up from that.
Right. Angela, and I'm sorry, but can we use the raise your hand thing? Because we have some people doing it and some people not, we're jumping over each other. So Angela.
Yeah, I'll just be brief, but one thing that strikes me in looking at this question about addressing student, family, and staff needs and kind of what we want to take forward, maybe something about taking forward from before the pandemic is, I feel like there, in some ways, those student, family, staff, the pandemic has forced a lot of silos. You know, we have families that have not physically met face-to-face with their students and teachers. We have families because their kids transition from say elementary to middle to high during the pandemic, who have not toured the school that their children are in or don't physically know how to navigate the space. And so a lot of the support comes from that community sense that's been really difficult to build during the pandemic. And so I feel like that's just something to be mindful of as we move forward. It's like in our work, what can we do to foster that community? I was really happy to hear about some of the activities, you know, that the student representatives shared, because that's what's been missing. You know, those things that really make you feel connected to your school, not just your grades and your teachers and your assignments, but this is a place for you.
I wanted to go back to what Kevin was talking about with the barriers, and I think that's like just even identifying the barriers and naming them is something that's come up too, and being able to say like, even ask why that's there, and to say like, is it necessary? And a lot of times it's like, it almost feels like sometimes like the way systems work is people look for the barrier to uphold something instead of looking for the barrier to say like, how do we remove it? And I feel like we've been doing that second part a little bit more. It may not feel like that to students, family, and staff at times, but I think that that is more the approach that we have started taking and need to continue to take too. So I think that that continual like identification and how do we get it, how do we dismantle it and that barrier instead of like, nope. So I think that that was a really good important point to bring up.
Let's transition to the next question.
Yeah. In good news, we only have two. And I actually think a lot of our discussion really does apply to this. So second question is thinking about, are there best practices or innovative strategies for collaboration that we can build upon? And I think we actually really started a great conversation there about this topic. So before we get into the discussion, we want to be really respectful of your time. And so
Like I said, this is our last question, but we just want to maybe save like 2 minutes at the end to identify any potential topics for the next meeting and say thank you. So, but with that being said, we'd love to open this up for more conversation.
There's about 11 minutes total.
Okay, so I'll be brief. This board and the district we're looking at strategic planning in the coming year. I just want to put on the table that I think the foundation has a role to play in that. I don't have a clear idea of what that looks like, but I think that you need to be part of that process in some way.
I really, really appreciate that. And I also want to add that we are looking for opportunities to advance our anti-racist and equity understanding as an organization. And we're very receptive to input and specific suggestions or collaborative opportunities.
Anything else?
I think.
Page it in.
So I think one thing I want to suggest, we should apply for an SBA fall conference if the deadline is not passed for workshop or presentation. I think this is a best practice where we are so far is worth sharing. And I remember Leaf graciously accepted to lead a very good discussion with other partners across the states. And I really noticed what we have here is very unique. And I would love to share maybe this video with others, but maybe for us to co-present at the conference would be a very important value. So that's one thing in terms of maybe not answering the question, but maybe saying, yes, we need to share what we have been doing so far. And hopefully that might foster connections with others. One thing I want to also highlight, Sarah serving on the foundation as a liaison. I think having both leaderships really connected very close. I think that's a very good best practice to be continued and instituted one way or the other. Acknowledging the burden on you will be much more because you have many hats there, but it's really important to create this alignment, situational awareness, and being able to share out with both boards on what's going on. I think there's a huge value there.
Brian?
So two things. One is that, so we've been doing this for a while now. And I think we have found a pretty good pattern of twice a year, an hour in each time, because it's number of connections, more so than like an extended period of time, once a year, once every other year. So I like the way we're doing it. And I know we're gonna move into another question here in just a second, Ashley, but what it makes me think about is as we complete some surveying with the community, we're going to want to reach out to groups to talk about what those priorities look like from our community and how do we really go further into better understanding how those priorities play out in our schools. And so I'm thinking that maybe for next time, the information that we will have put together in terms of that survey, that might be something that we spend time working on together, because it's something that we're going to be doing with different community groups. And this seemed like a natural fit for that conversation.
Great idea. Lynn? I was just gonna say that I think we, as board collaboration, think about what we mean by best practices and innovative strategy instead of itself, because I think sometimes when things are working well, it's like, okay, we did that, we need to do something new, but I'm like, what do we want to keep first before we try to just like, we must find something new to be innovative. And I think like there's sometimes pressure to be the best and be innovative. And when we think about best practices, are we talking about like between collaborations, our best practices, like what works best for this community? And I think that I'd like to know what we mean by those two as far as the boards are concerned and our collaborations too.
Just to respond to that, I think, and Sarah and Ryan can help me out if we were maybe thinking something different. We had this conversation a while ago, but I think we were really focused on best practices in terms of collaboration together, since it is a really big scope in terms of word choice. So yeah, we were definitely thinking about working together, what has been going really well, what maybe should we change around.
I just think it's good for the community to hear that too, what we mean by that, because we might not know, but it might not be. super clear.
I appreciate Lou's point that sometimes the best practices might be what some of what we're doing, and it doesn't have to be a new thing. And so, grow it. Yeah, grow it, and find a way to continue it rather than trying to change it. So, as Brian said, this has worked very well the last few weeks. And so how to really harness this to fuel the work for our schools and our kids and our teachers.
One more.
Shauna.
5 minutes total.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes, so quick points.
Okay, I'll be quick. And actually, I was just gonna turn it around because I feel like a lot of the responses so far come from this side of the table. And I'm just curious, from the foundation side, what's gone well for you? Or what are you looking for more of, or it?
Have a digital.
Okay.
So I think I wanted to as a participant. Well, just into that, like this whole water analogy, I thought it was extremely helpful. This is my first year on the board, but having Ryan and first Sammy and then Sarah come to our meetings and fill us in on what's happening and what is needed. And like that, our ability, like we recognize, of course, that the teachers were stressed out, but to have Ryan be able to say to us, like, these things won't change everything, but they'll help a little bit. And that feels really good to feel like we can contribute to that. For that two-way, the regular meetings from you guys. It feels really
I would just reiterate that there's been very consistent attendance at our meetings over the last few years, which is huge. I just think that's in itself has contributed a lot to our collaboration. And I'm wondering, everybody has busy schedules, so I don't want to overload your calendars, but maybe make some more openness to participation on a voluntary basis. I'm thinking about, I think it was last year when we did the scholarship awards.
Yeah.
And because there was a board funded scholarship, Vince sat on the review committee as well as we had some other outside community member participate. And I think that was kind of a fun lens on your part, like into our work. And then also you just, brought a unique perspective. And so maybe there's other opportunities where.
I don't know if
you
I
have
can
what
emotionally
you-
handle that. I would say no, I'd love to do that.
Anything else? So I think we should move on.
Are we gonna do the ideas
Looking
prompt?
forward, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
about 3 minutes.
Okay. Wait, before the ideas prompt, I just want to thank you for this forum. I think this has been the most productive conversation we've ever had as a group, and so I really appreciate all the pieces that came together to make that possible. And also I wanted to extend my thanks to you for your volunteer work on behalf of our kids. I get to thank my trustees for that all the time, but I just wanted to take the chance to do that now. And now we want ideas for our next October 2022 meeting.
I've had a crazy idea for a few years now. Sammy's heard this idea, and I think I've shared this with Ryan. And as I was writing down, as we've been talking, I've been writing things, and I keep coming back to the topic of housing. If we look at our attendance data or enrollment data, we see that it is declining. I don't need to explain to this group that we know that our community has a real struggle with housing. This idea came up from an article I read about, it was a borough, a section of Munich where the local government was investing in housing. They are actually buying apartment buildings because they wanted to ensure that there was affordable housing. And so I'm putting on the table, I think the district, maybe in collaboration with the foundation, should consider, looking forward into investing in housing. We know that we struggle with housing at the, I don't want to say lower, but at the entry level of the continuum. We know that we perennially are struggling with families that are unhoused. I think the district could have a role to play in that. And of course, there's transitional housing, case managed housing, intensive case management. And I don't want to get technical. I just I'm planting the seed is what I'm doing. I think it's something that we should think about.
I would just say this, especially I've heard it a lot. I think going upstream on the housing security is going to be phenomenally beneficial for the kids and the educators. And if we could look into what does fixing the problem upstream looks like, this is huge, and we can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. We together probably cannot do it alone. We need to think about also alliances and partnerships and highlighting the successes that we're doing, that we're highlighting through the McKinney-Vento reports and what the foundation has been supporting us. But still, we need to invest in housing for both educators and teachers, classified staff, and the students. And what that looks like, I think that would be really a role model of how we can fix this problem.
Lynn. We're talking about that level, it's super related, is childcare stuff, like after school programming kind of like costs and all that, because they're extremely tied together.
Yes, they are.
And so I don't need to explain anymore, I'll just say that. Everyone will nod their heads. Anything else?
You wanted a big, very audacious goal. That's a dream.
Oh, Julia's redlining us. Yeah. So I guess that's it. Our time is up. But I want to thank all of you for coming and sitting through a board meeting and sharing ideas and sharing this work, because you really, I think it is, it's that water that fills the jar, it fills the cup. And we started the two boards meeting together in my time on the school board, and I think watching that relationship grow, it's, I think that we've got something that really benefits how we do things. And I appreciate your willingness to come in and spend time with us.
Hooray for the foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're gonna take 5 minutes.
Take 5 minutes.
Back in session with the Corvallis School Board, and we are going to have a slight adjustment, and the next item on the agenda will be the Bond Oversight Committee annual report.
We thank you to Jennifer Richmond for sticking with us to this point in the meeting. Again, for that, as well as chairing the Bond Oversight Committee for the last year. Jennifer has done a tremendous job of continuing to keep us focused on the work, keep us focused on the priorities of that group and the responsibilities of that group. As we've sort of in some ways transitioned back to a hybrid approach. So we've been able to do some school touring, but at the end of the day, the Bond Oversight Committee continues to meet with us on a monthly basis to make sure that we are aligning the projects with our bond promises. We are continuing to watch the bottom line and recognizing that we are in a time of once again, a time of changes in terms of supply chain and costs and all of those pieces, and to ask questions that make sure we're in alignment and also moving forward in a fiscally conservative way based on what we need to do. So the report has been developed. It's in your packet. Any questions you may have, I would be happy to answer them. But again, the priority tonight was to give thank the committee for the work that they've done. You know, many committees start and they may go through potentially a school year. This has been ongoing for the last 4 years. And so to have consistency in the folks on that committee has also been great because they've got to see the process from beginning to as we near completion. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Otherwise, the report was in your packet and it was developed by that committee.
Does anyone have any questions?
So I don't have any questions, and I think that has been a hallmark of this bond project, is that it has been just marked with, you know, I would say uncharacteristic transparency, that the work has been done in a very sober way. The team has been very conservative, and I just want to express my immense appreciation for the Bond Oversight Committee. Thank you, Jennifer. It is thanks to you and your team that I have to say that this bond process has been very easy on the school board. And that is not always the case. Often, I mean, we know the headlines. We've seen the headlines of districts all over the state that have struggled with their bonds, but that has not been this board's experience. And I just really appreciate the diligence and the attention to detail of your team in just holding our whole system accountable and just making this bond process very smooth. So on behalf of the Corvallis community and the board, or at least myself, thank you so much for your work.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just
Sammy.
thank you. I just want to highlight the same and say that if the committee did not exist, or if the issues that are raised by community members, that we have heard several issues that highlighted by community members and asking, we need this fixed, or we need to highlight the problem in a certain plan, and having the oversight committee and the whole bond program with really this safeguard that whatever we do as a school board, as a school district, there's a citizens oversight, and also there's this feedback loop and advocacy loop. It's phenomenal, and it saves us from being in a place where I know one of the districts in Oregon where community members are telling me they're never going to vote for a bond again because they perceive, and not necessarily the perception is true or not, in the other the community that they were promised something, but something else was happened. And as we all know, you have to pivot, you have to have some problem solving. And having the problem solving with an oversight committee and with engagement with the community increases the trust, not only with the bond, not only with the construction, but the whole school district system. So really, we owe it to you and your work and your engagement and oversight that the trust is high in Corvallis School District because of this unique experience that we have and relationship we have.
Yeah, thank you. And then, just so you know, there was one opening on the committee, and we filled it with Erica Koenig, who is a parent of and has a student at Adams. And so again, making sure that we have representation across our schools as well. So anyhow, that's a position that was recently filled with Children's meeting.
I was just gonna add that. I was gonna say we either have a vacancy or Ryan has something to tell me. So
We have filled it.
okay, great. Great. Well, for just a split second, I'd like to say thank you so much. But really, Kim Patton, Dale, and the bond management team is 95% of why things go smoothly. 99%, we're just there to ask questions. But I do have one little thing that I told Ryan when I started on this committee. I was on the long range facility planning committee, and I said that between him and Kim, they had given me 3-ring binders this big of input and emails from all of anyone who cared. And so I said I wanted to be on this committee to make sure that the spirit of all of those emails that I read were held true. And so he blessed me with this, year 5? Are we in year 5? Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be that long, but I love it. And thank you so much.
Jennifer, you and your committee, I remember when we voted to extend your committee, and it was, as my colleagues have said, really so impactful and helpful to us to have members of the community on asking questions and really providing the oversight for the community who voted to provide us with the funds to do this job. And you should be willing to do that as volunteers over 5 years now has been just such really a gift of your time to our schools and our community. And often when we have our bond reports, that's like the highlight of the meeting for all of us. In the middle of this pandemic, when you all were there asking the questions and making sure this all kept going. And we, as we were dealing with crises and unknowns and all this stuff, to have just the steady progress on the bond felt so good so many times at meetings. So really, thank you, thank you, thank you. In a tough time, you really have been part of something that's kind of kept everybody going. So we are very grateful. Anything else? So I think with that, we will move on. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Good night.
So the next item on the agenda, we will skip back now to resolution number 220401, the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month resolution. Does anyone want to make a motion? I feel like we change this every time. Does anyone have discussion?
Bring it on the table.
No, just motion discussion.
That's what I thought it was.
This is just says after discussions.
Yeah.
We're kind of,
Either way.
yeah,
Okay.
we haven't been real strict on that.
Yeah. So would somebody like to make a motion and then we'll have discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at people and not at the hands. Vince?
I move that the board adopt resolution number 22-0401, acknowledgement of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Here, second.
All second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Vince and seconded by Shauna that we approve resolution number 220401. Recognition of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. But now entertain final discussion.
I just want to say with this one that we know that there's, this is a large community as all of our other ones are. And I know there's many people that identify as Asian and Asian American from different regions. And I hope they find themselves highlighted in here in some capacity. And also the Pacific Islander community as well, who is often left out of conversations, and also folk who hold multiracial identities that are part of the communities highlighted as well. And so I just wanted to name that, and there's some pieces in there I wanted to give folk a heads up that might bring up some things for them if they've experienced them in their families or in the past or in current times. That's just the reality of how things have been and are at the moment. I'm starting to get lost for words right now, but the point is that Asian Americans and folk that are even just immigrated that are identified as Asian have always been a big part of this community. I know, and I've done research on some of the social justice tour kind of things and learning about the local contributions of folk from different areas of Asia, with the railroads, especially in town, and some other pieces of our local history. I think that's important to note. And also that Corvallis was actually a site that that took people to internment camps. A lot of people don't know that, like we were one of the locations here in Oregon that sent people away during World War II. And that's a small piece of our history as well. So there's some positive highlights and some things that have caused harm to community in the past too. And I hope that that students are able to learn about these kind of things in school because of things like highlighting Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and as well as the cross-Pacific travels of Pacific Islanders pre-colonial times as well that have always existed along the Pacific coast, including Oregon, and the valuable contributions of all the communities highlighted. Thanks.
I want to thank our board members who continue to write these resolutions for us and really highlight this essential history. I think that's a really important kind of learning opportunity for not just our students, but our community members who may read the resolutions and learn something they didn't know and maybe investigate further. And also to continue to make these resolutions that will go forward and are not just a one-time recognition. That's something to do. So thank you all for your work with these together. It's been really valuable.
I'd like to say thank you too, if I can step in for just a second. So every month we send out a teaching and learning newsletter to our entire staff, and we always focus on the month. And every time now I'm able to include a resolution because you passed a resolution the month before, but that newsletter is talks about why we celebrate and provides tons of resources for teachers to pull into their classroom. And it's once again that idea that you are, you're providing us that backstop and that foundation that this is what we should be doing in our classrooms. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other discussion? No. So it has been resolved that has been moved that we adopt resolution number 220401, the resolution in support of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Now, we will now, in her and I wrote, I'm losing my words too.
It's after 9 p.m.
Director Alagra, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Adams.
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Tomini.
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Whitebear. Aye. And I vote aye. Resolution is adopted unanimously. And now, as has been our tradition, we will read the resolution into the record.
Corvallis School District 509J, Acknowledgement of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Resolution number 220401. Whereas the Corvallis School District recognizes and pays tribute to the significant contributions made in our community by Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And whereas the Corvallis School District affirms that students, families, staff, and community members should be valued for all aspects of their identities. And whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month grew out of efforts of former Capitol Hill staffer Jeannie Ju in the 1970s. And whereas Asian Pacific Heritage Week was first proclaimed by the United States House of Representatives in 1977. And
Whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month has been proclaimed by several states since, and whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are largely left out of academic discourse, and whereas members of the Asian American community have historically been subjected to exclusionary laws, discriminatory policies, segregation, and internment, and continue to be targeted by anti-Asian violence and actions of hate. And whereas Oregon proclaimed April as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month permanently in 2021. And
Whereas what was then called Asian Pacific Heritage Month was first proclaimed at the national level in 1978. And whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have contributed to the history and collective future of Corvallis and Benton County, Oregon. And whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month provides an opportunity to continue the district's growth in learning about the many contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to the nation, world, and local community. And whereas education is a necessary component for creating a more equitable and anti-racist community, nation, and world. And
Whereas the Corvallis School District has committed to equity and anti-racism, and whereas the Corvallis School District has a responsibility to honor and respect the diverse histories of our community, and whereas the Corvallis School District believes each and every student must be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, language, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Corvallis School District does hereby proclaim May 2022, as well as each May annually as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the district, and strongly encourages students, families, staff, and community members to join in existing local celebrations, and encourages all schools in the district to help highlight this month in great appropriate ways, as well as highlight the contributions of all Asian American and Pacific Islander peoples to the local community, nation, and beyond, both historically and in current times. Adopted by the Board of Directors of the School District Number 509J, Corvallis of Benton and Lynn Counties, Oregon, at its regular meeting this day, the 14th day of April, 2022. Okay. So next we have the bond update with Ken and Dale.
Am I supposed to do anything more? I'm not logged in or anything, so it's okay. We'll just do this. Okay.
just unmute.
Okay. So Dale, you wanna
Yeah.
kick us out?
Good evening. Thank you for
having us. We're happy to have our bond report. It's been a couple months, I think, since we've done a PowerPoint presentation, so we're hoping there's some good information for you here. Three of us, Kim, Ryan, and I, went to a great conference last Friday. We were able to do a presentation to a really great group of colleagues, and it was well received. At that conference, and we were talking about engagement of the community, which was an awesome part of this bond program early on, and continues to be. But it was interesting to get some feedback from other districts of some of the impacts that they are seeing out there. And we heard some discussion of that a few minutes ago. You know, and I'll just read them off because I think they're pretty significant. Tough market, projects are getting canceled or deferred, material deliveries are delaying project completions, cost escalations, labor shortages. And we received compliments from multiple districts for how we were handling all this. And I think that's the key, is how do you react to these things and plan ahead as best you can for all the surprises that we've been experiencing lately. So
I'm going to say we were reflecting about school districts who were there, board members who were there, getting ready to go out for a bond, and we did not envy that.
No. Tough time.
I can tell you that since Bonds and Ballots, I have heard lots of positive feedback on your presentation. So
we
yeah,
had
a lot of impact.
A lot of good interaction with the group too. Lots of good ideas shared out.
Some fairly minimal content and lots of neat pictures, so we can just kind of go through fairly quickly. Say stop if you like. Bessie Coleman, old school coming down. Gone. Letitia Carson, you see there a sequence prep for the slab, and then that allows the framing, so that's exciting. Just some nice pictures of the finishes that are now coming together or complete, and that's cool. And that was awesome, Kim.
Yeah, principal for the day. So at Letitia Carson, these students won the opportunity. Actually, one of those students won the opportunity, principal for the day, and chose to bring her siblings. Their siblings won. I'm not sure which one was principal for the day. What was that?
Yeah, it's her siblings.
Her siblings, okay. Yeah.
At Letitia Carson, we're going to ask for a fairly significant change order and bond reserve allocation. And this kind of gives you some bigger background on what's going on with the project. And this is very similar to what you've seen on other projects early on, like I think we did one in maybe January and earlier in September for other projects. The gist of this is it shows how the construction contracts have evolved on the left side. That does not include the soft costs, which in this case are, a couple $1 million, which means design fees, permits, inspections, blah, 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 blah. On the right side is the change orders and how they're categorized. And the items that you're seeing tonight for approval are in these numbers. And I think what's interesting is the percent of forecast that these change orders represent. And it's actually fairly low compared to most remodel projects. So, we can take pride in mitigating changes to that extent. Catherine Jones Harrison, also similar state of construction. On the lower left, you'll see a tent that was installed, temporary viscline tent over the slab pour, and thank goodness, because today it rained pretty hard a few times. So that was, a fairly minimal investment to keep the schedule going, and that's vital. You can see the different color schemes that are showing up for Catherine Jones Harrison. And this is the Catherine Jones Harrison summary that's comparable to the other one. A little bit higher percent of forecast, but still in an acceptable range for work with. And off we go at Adams. Nice to see that project so close to this office getting underway.
That picture was taken by somebody who was authorized to be in that space, that last one.
Sure. Demolition underway and hallway prep. There's the few modulars that are there. We're getting close to being able to use those, which will help us facilitate the interior construction.
Exciting piece of that is that we're doing walking school buses from over here over, and we've got district staff who have signed up for days of the week to do crossing guard duty in the mornings to help out, so we didn't have such an impact on the Adams staff. And it's been really a treat for us to get to engage with the elementary kids, hearing all kinds of stories and lots of excitement going to school in the morning.
Very
So
cool.
it's fun. So Frank, oh, you're waiting for me to talk about Franklin, aren't you? So Franklin, the first step was abatement. And as you can see here, we abated the floor tiles in the hallways. And we've started on demolition in the locker rooms and in the library area. So let's hang on a second there, Doug. So I want to point out that we became aware of the air quality concern during the week after spring break and responded to the smell of what was in alignment with a wet slab. We provided some ventilation to help dry out the slab and did not hear of any symptoms for staff or students until that Friday, and we did an immediate response and put action into place. And when we tested for VOCs, we did not exceed 4 parts per million. They were between really just 2 to 3 parts per million. And we have consistently seen that reduce. And this morning we tested with no ventilation running and we had 0.2 to 0.4 parts per million. And the OSHA permissible exposure limit for the product Safeguard Low Odor is 50 parts per million based on the SDS sheet that was provided with the chemicals that were used by our subcontractor that compliance. So I just wanted to point that out, that we are well below any action levels and that we're continuing that process and until we get to a full resolution. So we'll just leave it at that.
Got it.
Garfield, you've seen lots of pictures of Garfield and probably have toured it by now with that monument sign as a new feature. And, you know, before too long, the actual letters will show up there on the blue part that will say Garfield Elementary.
Pretty exciting. That's an electronic reader board. So staff will be able to put bilingual messages out on that reader board for families to read on their way by, and all of our elementary schools will be getting those monument signs with reader boards. Exciting.
I've seen children climbing on that.
It's a great climbing structure.
Just some nice outdoor shots of that.
I was about to say that is one sweet garden, school garden. That's like,
It's about to get irrigation too.
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Play, nice structure there.
And to use Vince's words, that's a sweet play structure.
The one picture you may not have seen is those new roll-up doors, which is pretty neat. They almost disappear, and when you're inside, if you can only imagine the difference between the old doors and all this glass in those dark spaces.
Are these the ones that you were like waiting
Yes.
on?
Yeah,
They're here.
So
They
those
finally
bottom-
arrived.
Yeah, and those bottom panels actually will be replaced with glass. There was a manufacturer or something, and so we've got glass panels.
So that'll be another gear problem.
So you're saying don't hold our.
CHS, more from there, just some nice shots of the work coming together. And that dust screen, there was hiccups along the way, but they're overcoming them, and that should be done soon. At CV, wood shop is extraordinary, and so is all the CNC spaces.
Brenda Downen is working for us as a communication consultant. She was out interviewing students at Crescent Valley, and some of the students who are working on building tiny homes said this is the kind of space that we dream out, that dreams are made. So, I mean, to hear those kinds of comments, which is pretty fantastic.
More neat stuff.
I was just
CV.
gobsmacked at that CNC machine. That is, yeah, I just gotta say, that's amazing. That's a great machine.
College Hill update, we are out for general contractor bids, and those are due on the 21st. If we make budget, when we make budget, we'll bring that contract before the board on May 5th. If it occurs that we're not in budget, we will have a little time to attempt to negotiate with the low bidder. That's allowed. But I'm optimistic, so we'll bring you the contract in May if all goes as planned.
We worked magic up to this point.
Construction scheduled to start this summer and finish a year later. And then you've heard all about the district office occupation.
Yeah.
And that's just a group of contractors showing interest in our project.
Question.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a hard question and you can sidestep if you want. So I'm just letting you know, I'm blindsiding you with the tough questions. As I was looking at our reserves, I was like, oh my goodness, we're down to $1.8 billion in reserves, which, you know, in the scope of this project, is very, very small. And I was like, okay, what do we do if we overrun? And do we have plans? I know you're probably thinking about these things, and I had that thought, and I was like, what are our contingency plans if we go over
Those
budget?
are the things we talk about once a week.
I
at the leadership,
know,
you
it's
know,
like
where we
this-
go.
But
It
I'm
is
not,
not a lot of money to be in reserves.
right, no, and so I had concerns and,
Yeah, for a comment.
Yeah.
So that is, in addition to those reserves, there are the contingencies that each project is carrying in the budget.
okay,
And there's, in our negotiated contracts with Fortis and Gertie, there are also, they have some contingency built into theirs. Pretty small. Both of them are pretty small, but they are in addition to that 1.9. Just the other day at Bond Leadership, I don't remember what the request was, but somebody was wanting something and the team made a decision, no, we need to hang on to that 1.9 right now. So we did.
The 1.9 is the amount that we think we need to keep in abeyance to get us through these last projects. So when we look at the bids as they come in for College Hill, we're pretty firm that we need to stay within budget. And we need to be creative in how we look at that to make sure we can get it within budget. And so we've got some work ahead of us if that is the case.
yeah, and thanks for that clarity, but, you know, because that was the follow-on question, because I knew each project had a contingency built into it. So thanks for that clarification, that there is more cushion in this project besides what that 1.8 unallocated reserve.
One thing I would just like to add is the recognition that, you know, you've been required to make decisions along the way. And we've made those decisions with the information we've had in front of us at the time.
Yes.
And so I feel positive and good about that. What we see next will be another decision that we're going to have to make. But we can't go back to the decisions we made 3 years ago. And I also want us not to go back and speak into question our decisions we made 3 years ago, because the information we had then is not the information we have now. So I just want us to give each other grace as we continue towards the end of the project.
Right. And I don't want you to take the question I asked as any indication of my lack of trust or faith in your ability to manage this project.
And that's
It's
not,
just,
and that's not how I read it. It's the
But-
same question I've asked.
Okay.
And that's the feedback I've received. And it was good wisdom, so I'm sharing it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what the conversation we had on Wednesday morning.
We keep having to take that step back and say, we couldn't have predicted the pandemic, we couldn't have predicted, you know, the market conditions. And, but we're gonna do our best to meet bond promises. Any way we can, we're going to meet bond promises if there's any way possible, we'll find it.
Anyone else?
Thank you. This is really great report. I have a few questions. The first one is for the change order. It said in the presentation jurisdictional changes, $500,000. Could you speak more to that?
Sure. The design team does their best to anticipate what the city would require. There's always gray areas on code. And it's that negotiation that took time. So there are physical things that were required by the city's permit process. We had to add some pipes, or we had to change the fire loop, things that cost money, but the time also costs a lot of money. And that process ate up time, and the contractor has staff that needs to continue, and so that's a fair amount of its costs.
So we're talking about permit delays.
Correct.
I'll put it out there. Our permits were delayed considerably on both Letitia Carson and Catherine Jones Harrison.
And this is a percentage of that 2 elementary school construction, which we're talking about $120 million. So jurisdictional changes is for the 2 elementaries, right?
Correct. That was those are the two schools that have been
Yeah.
challenged with that.
So I'm just curious, those permit delays, how much of they are eating out of the full amount of the project? And what's the denominator that's, I think is fair to think of, is about 120 to elementary schools construction? We have $500,000 jurisdictional changes, or do we have more jurisdictional changes that's happened in the past that I should account for?
The chart that was presented in the PowerPoint, the right column captures the to-date activity for those two projects.
Okay.
So jurisdictional number of 500,000 is.
So Sammy, I think what I hear you asking is, how much do we pay for permit delays?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, out of
That's
project
exactly
costs.
what he said.
Yes.
Yeah. So permit delays is wrapped up into that. There's some other smaller things, but the majority of those numbers are permit delays.
Yeah.
So we could work on trying to whittle that down to just delays, but that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
Because we don't really.
It included some impacts last summer, overtime that was required to open school and some things like that. But we could.
But this number for this project is, both of these projects is high because of that. Because we had, how many months were we delayed? This? 4 months. That's huge. And it pushed our project into 2 summers instead of 1. So,
And we have seen similar stuff in other projects as well.
and we have, I also want to let you know that we have honed our processes with the city. Like, we've made great strides in that with the city, both on our part that we provide to the city and on working within the city's parameters to make sure that we are not seeing those kinds of delays this summer. So right now, I think we're permitted everywhere except Mountain View and College Hill.
Okay.
And so Mountain View is in the county, remember? So we're working with a different jurisdiction, but we're optimistic. We've been in for permits since December. And then College Hill just went in earlier this month because of the changes that we had to do to our documents. But again, we work very closely with the city to make sure that we're gonna avoid delays on permitting. The city has met us at the table with that. So I want to be clear about that, that we want to acknowledge that they've come after that experience that has been really hard to absorb. They've come to the table and we've been working through that. So.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Had another question. But I forgot it. Maybe I'll remember. There you go.
Okay, I have a couple questions. One of them, like, I don't think we need to answer tonight, but I'm wondering how the board can have a fuller picture, like something that we can see that happened with the asbestos removal situation. That way we can answer questions a little bit better when they come up and know the full scope of what happened. I don't know if that needs to come from you, Ryan, or who it needs to come from, but there seems to be like, I don't think that needs to come from you all. So I think that we really need something about that, and especially like hearing what Kim said and hearing public testimony earlier, like, I don't feel like we have very much information. And that's a little bit like, especially with the scope of what happened. So that's just a request. And then my question for you all is in the packet and just like driving around in town and stuff like that, the schools that are like 99%, mostly like Garfield and Lincoln, the ones that are like super duper close. How far out are those? Because they're like so close, and it would be helpful to know, like, for the budget, like, is all of it going to be on? Do we have enough? Is some of that going to be able to be reallocated? And so that's kind of where I'm at, because it feels like there's like, they're so close. And I know some of it's weather and stuff like that and stuff getting here, but do you all have an estimate of when the ones that are like right on the edge of completion?
Sure, Garfield is really close. It's pretty much that monument sign.
Okay.
And then that said, the money has been balanced and allocated, and there's a big pot of gold waiting for us there. Same in Lincoln, they've forecasted tightly. And we need to get through the spring planting season, which is imminent, to get those fields going.
Yeah.
And then you'll see that site starting to feel really done.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I'm like, it's more like if unanticipated expenses come up, that could like.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything new, then those specific projects would probably not be able to fund them out of their current budgets.
Right. Because I've seen them specifically just because I lived over there, right, is like the sidewalk and street have to get cut open and redone a few times, and I don't know if that's a city or if that's part of the construction thing, and so those kind of questions, like if stuff keeps coming up and all of a sudden something has to get uncovered and redone, is that kind of stuff gonna impact the budget negatively, do you think?
It could.
Okay.
We're not seeing any huge issues in Lincoln. There are some small ones that we're working with the city on Alexander primarily. Some approach changes. There's been a lot of vehicles reaching the curb and driving on lawns and stuff like that. It's fairly tight. The city is being somewhat flexible in their approach to those. So we're kind of designing and negotiating with them on those points.
Okay, I think those kind of questions are like thinking about the other schools too, like, right, are there things that we're learning and to think about to try to save some of those costs of having to redo some of the pieces that, okay, that's super helpful, thank you. And then the last thing, I just wanted to thank you too, because I know it's super late and I know people that work in buildings, construction stuff get up super early, so thank you for being here so late too.
That's okay. I enjoy these visits.
Yeah.
So Sammy has his hand up.
I'm sorry, yeah. Remember my question.
We're all here.
I know, we're all here, we can just, let's just do, let's just, nobody's, yeah, we're done. But Sammy's had his hand up for a while.
It's all right. Speaking of the funds we have and the projects we're trying to do, are we aware of anything in the infrastructure bill from the federal government that could be useful for things that we're doing, or we're on our parking lot of things good to have? Speaking of energy efficiency, HVAC, or anything else?
In terms of the federal funds, I'm not up to speed on that side. I think the district has targeted those towards educational issues primarily.
Are you talking about ESSER?
Yes, sir.
No.
Infrastructure development, I have to research that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if there's anything in there for us yet.
We
but-
continue to work hard to get additional funds from ETO and approval to use our SB 1149 dollars. Those are big contributors.
Get on that infrastructure bill. Any money we can get our hands on, we'll do it.
Yes.
Vince.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a trainer moment here. The preponderance of the public comment that the board heard tonight was approaching a complaint topic. So I want to caution my colleagues to, while I agree that I think that we would like to know more about the situation, particularly around the resolution of it, I want us to be cognizant of our role, and that the board has expressed its expectation about health and safety in schools in policy, and that it's incumbent on the staff to execute on that, and that we don't want to engage in that topic because we may bias ourselves in our judicial capacity. And so if we're approached by parents or people from Franklin, I think we need to refer them to the superintendent, so that if it were to come to a formal complaint and came to level 4 and came to us, that we would be able to participate in that and be objective.
I think I'm more wanted like the basics of like what happened, what was the resolution kind of thing, you know what I mean? Just so.
Yeah. But we need to allow the district to go through their process of navigating that. Clearly that there are some parents and people around Franklin, that school community, that are feeling strongly and don't have all the information that they need.
Yeah.
And I think the district is probably going to be engaging those folks. We need to allow them the space to do that. Yeah. And then after that, I think the superintendent was probably, or bring up a report to us, or at least advise us via email, how at the end of the rainbow, how that resolved. And then if it does become a formal complaint, it may end up here in the boardroom. We'll get all those details because we'll need them. It's one of the hard parts of being on the school board, because we want to be engaged and we want to help, but it's important that we're mindful of it.
Sammy, your hand is still up.
I'll put it down.
Okay.
I just found some information. It's probably still in its incumbency phase about an announcement from April 4th about action plan for building better schools infrastructure. So happy to forward it to staff. And I know they're trying to award it to some schools across the country as like model schools. So yeah, if there's anything for us, I think that'd be great.
One last item. I was really struck by this change in student discipline. It says we have an underground detention system. It just struck me as funny. I know what an underground detention system is, but I was like, it didn't specify that it was for water, and I was like, oh, that's.
I will clarify.
For the record, this is instruction.
Stormwater.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you for staying late. And again, you know, I'd like to Jennifer that bond projects are the highlight of a lot of meetings. So thank you for your good work. Giving the community the emphasis on the buildings.
We have tours scheduled on the 26th and 28th.
26 and 28. Is that which buildings?
Lincoln on the 26th, Garfield on the 28th. And we're gonna be pushing that communication
It's in the afternoon then.
4 to 7.
And we need to sign up just like last time.
No, these
Oh,
are
I've got
open
it.
house.
I've got,
staff.
yeah, I've got it on my calendar yeah, already.
Cool.
And then they have 2 action items.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we do. Right. Yes.
Not just Lincoln.
Well, we actually have to get some work done.
I have a motion.
So do we have any discussion or do we want to make a motion? Go ahead, make a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $556,558 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $1,002,277 for Catherine Jones Harrison Elementary School to fully fund the bond work promised for the school.
I second the motion.
It's been moved by Sammy and seconded by Vince that we authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $556,000 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $1,002,277 for Catherine Jones Harrison Elementary School to fully fund the promises we made with this bond. Well, now entertain final discussion. No discussion, take a vote. Director Algebra, how do you vote?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I am done for today.
No good work. No good board work happens after 9 p.m.
Director Adams.
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Tomini, how do you vote?
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Whitebeard. Aye. I vote aye too. Passes unanimously. Finish that project.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a motion.
Okay. What is your motion?
I move to authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $612,010 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $837,645 for Letitia Carson Elementary School to fully fund the bond work promised for the school.
Second the motion.
So it has been moved by Sammy and seconded by Vince that we authorize a change order to Fortis Construction in the amount of $612,010 and the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $837,645 for Letitia Carson Elementary School to fully fund our bond promises. Is there any discussion? Chair,
There's an error.
Director Algebra, how do you vote?
I will. Aye.
Oh,
Oh,
Kim.
So we just got an error.
Uh-oh.
No,
Should be 47.
So it looks like we've made a transposition of numbers. So the allocation of bond reserve in the amount of $847,645. It's listed in the table or the chart up above.
What is that number again, please?
$847,645.
so it should be a 4 instead of 3.
847,645.
Got it.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Madam Chair,
We're taking the vote.
Oh,
So,
hard for it to finish the
I'm
vote.
just gonna,
yeah.
I can
Well,
do
you can
amend.
make an amendment.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna do amend.
Okay.
We haven't finished.
So that's,
Vince?
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I move that the allocation in the motion be changed to $847,645.
Pardon me?
Passes without objection.
It needs a second.
Okay, second.
Is it past that objection? Right, so we are now vote on our amended resolution
Yes.
to allocate bond reserves in the amount of $847,645. Director Algebra, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Co-Vice Chair Tomei,
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair White Bear,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
See, we got this.
Thank you so much. For 6,000 words.
And can I ask them that for the record, that packet gets updated with the numbers correctly?
exactly.
Thank you, Julie.
So the next item on our agenda is school calendars.
That's me. So we're coming to you tonight with a request to adjust next year's school calendar.
Mhm.
And there'll be 2 adjustments we're asking for. The first is to make some adjustments to the conference days in order to align the trimester schedule that we have put out for middle school. And the second adjustment goes back to our conversation from a month or 2 ago about winter break. We do need to move winter break, and that came after a lot of conversation and that Superintendent Moss had with districts around the state. We were like the only one that had this calendar. So, it has implications for a lot of things, and we think that it's in our best interest to go ahead and do that. So what you're seeing in front of you is an adjustment to the winter break for next year and an adjustment to conference days and alignment for the trimester schedule. We'd like to keep kids at different levels as close to days off as possible, so we're not having parents having kids all over the place.
Thank you.
So there's no action required this evening, because we want to get that word out in case there is any feedback that we received.
So you're gonna bring it back.
Yeah.
And Brian, you might know my question, are we, that split families, are they going to be impacted positively by this change? As I'm speaking for both sides of any split family.
I think families with particular agreements for visitation will be, some were fine just by the way it was written, others had their agreements written in a way that this will impact them positively.
Okay.
And then as you think about other districts around the state, and actually along our coastline, alignment of those 2 weeks. If there's families who have kids in other school districts or other communities, this creates an alignment there that we would not have if we leave it.
Makes sense to be in alignment with almost statewide.
Yeah.
Right.
Or to not be.
Or to not be. Thanks for catching that one.
Well, what I would say is that we tend to put out 3 years, and we go out further. So many of our school districts around us have just adopted their calendars in the last month.
Okay.
And so having feedback from the community, what I'm waiting to better understand is where everyone has landed on their calendars, and now recognizing that we are an outlier to come back to you with that information.
Thank you.
As a lesson learned, other than us being very proactive is a good thing, I believe. What could we do to make sure such alignment is going to happen in future years?
I think that the tricky spot thing for us has been where specific holidays have fallen for this winter and next winter. That's less of a case 2 and 3 years out. So we're learning from what we're seeing happen this year for next year and then the next in the following years.
When I remember when we just looked at the calendars that were looking to adopt for 20 years, and the way the holidays fall does not make sense. It's a tightness of when the holiday falls and when vacation starts or ends. So I just probably know it in the calendars we're looking at.
We debated another survey of families at the same time. And that there's a number of surveys that have been done recently. So we felt like this is a good way to put it on the street and see if we have this.
I generally appreciate the having the family talk early. There are times when we have to not say no and put up a barrier where there doesn't need to be. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is consolidated action. As a reminder, these items on the agenda or are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in consolidated action?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I remember in a past meeting, there was mention that there were multiple folks who put their names in for the budget committee. Was that something that was reviewed at some point, or did somebody put their name out? Do we have one which remaining?
So we had both candidates withdraw.
Oh.
And so the person who's just we're moving forward now in New York applied once those others who individuals had withdrawn.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah.
Any other question? Does anyone wish to make a motion? Blue?
Make a
motion.
Make a motion. Do it. Make a motion.
Consolidated action. There a second?
I'll second it.
So it's been moved by Lou and seconded by Vince that we approve the items of consolidated action. Any final discussion? Director Lagerfeld.
Aye.
Director Adams.
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Tomini.
Aye.
Co-Vice Chair Whitebear. Aye. I vote aye. Items of consolidation passes unanimously. Next, consolidated information. These items in this portion of the agenda are for discussion. Would anyone like to discuss any items in consolidated action or consolidated information? I'm sorry. Sean?
I would. Do you want me to just name the ones?
Yeah, just name them.
The one was JFCF, which was the bullying.
Mhm.
And then one is IGBAF -AR on special education. and Visualized education.
Anyone else have anything they would like to?
It's the same one.
So what if we start, Sean? I'm going to start with the JFCF.
I just had a very small note with the addition of language around each student has the right to a safe learning environment. I wondered if there would be benefit to really clarifying and saying both emotionally and physically safe. as part of that.
Okay, Sammy, did you have a comment on that one? No. Okay. And then the IGBAFAR, Sean?
Two little things. One was a specific language question that I had in reading through this policy. And then one was a process question on page 3. I just had a question around whether or not this is something that it would be helpful to clarify under B, student participation. B1 says whenever appropriate, the student with a disability is a member of the team. And my question around that was, who decides in terms of the student being included as part of the team? You know, if the staff says that they recommend not, but the parents would like the student to be there, or if there's a discrepancy in that. And I was just curious. I didn't see mentioned. I may have missed it somewhere else in the document, but it was just a question that might be helpful to clarify if there ever was a discrepancy.
I know that in my experience, it's been about age. When I was in high school, students were always a part of their IEP team. When I went to the elementary school, I saw students starting to participate in their IEP meetings as 4th and 5th graders as they're beginning that transition. But then I would defer to them in if he has
We can get some additional information on that one. around language, but I think the intention is for, as Melissa described it, to have it be, I can't think of an example where I've been in an IEP where we asked not to have a student present. The rule that is typically to engage students in some efficacy. And so we can look for language, but as a general, I guess as in a practical way, that's what we have. And maybe that's something to say as a way to build self-efficacy, we encourage, or something like that, to highlight how there is intention behind including. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure that I read the intention there and the other examples that were included.
Right.
But just making sure too that there was policy all that on if there ever come a point where a staff member made a recommendation in one way or family wanted to do something else, that they felt that they had policy
to do that.
That inclusion.
Makes sense. Okay.
And then my one process question was around for this, as well as there was another procedural safeguards.
Yeah.
If there are or have been points in time as these policies get reviewed or updated language, whether brought out to, let's say, the Special Education Advisory Committee or CF, and families in particular, just in terms of making sure that they've also had a chance to take a look and see themselves reflected in this, or if there are things in the policies that are working or not. And I was especially thinking about CF because of their just such a dedicated group of folks who has continually come together, shared feedback, done research to look at policy. So just have that question about process.
Yeah, I see these two policies going from here then to talking to our SPED department, and then from there working with teachers and out, out to CF that way. I that's easy.
Thank you.
So on the same AR, I'm wondering the source of the changes. Is it internal recommendations, or is there a?
No, that's come from the state. The big change that you see on page 8.
Yeah, especially pages 7 and 8. So 7, the C5 for the providing resources for deaf, blind, and hard of hearing, and also the transitional post-secondary transitional planning.
Yeah.
Is that like an administrative or long?
It's well, it looks like it's blocked because it's in the procedural safeguards as well. So it's gonna be in both places.
Okay.
Especially the part about, especially the piece, the one on page 8, the promoting self-determination and independence, you see that in both ARs. These here are the one about deaf, blind, hard of hearing, and then the other about making sure we're accessing folk rehab and disability services. I think that's just coming from ODE, but I can check on that.
Yeah, I guess that's
because there's no
curiosity.
citation anywhere, so.
Yeah, I don't see the citation, but it's just a curiosity. Both are really good changes. I'm wondering, where's the funding coming from for transitional planning? Is it coming from IDEA? Is it something that we're funding internally because we don't have enough funds? Are we fully equipped to do that?
So,
Yeah.
So as you know, we are required to continue to spend the same amount over a year in general funds to fund maintenance of effort beyond what we receive through IDEA, which has never met the needs from the federal level for supporting students with disabilities in school districts. We're not alone in that, we're unique. And so it's a combo of the two that helps us to do that. And then there's other programs that have other sources of funding as well. And we have some grant dollars that help with transition. So it's just like the conversation we had with the foundation earlier. There's a number of sources of funds that come to help to support that.
Thank you.
Yep.
We're good. Okay, so the final item on our agenda is board member comments. we haven't had comments yet, but-
I would just like to say it's been a delight to be with you all tonight and have this experience again. I had forgotten how much fun.
It was hard to pull people back after recesses because it was like hard. I would like to say it is my son's 17th birthday. And as we are here at the meeting, I have been thinking about our families, and we get thanked often for our volunteer work, but really the reason we can be here is because for many of us, somebody's at home holding stuff together, whether it's an older child sibling or a partner, they're in this effort too. So thank you to my son who may or may not have eaten his birthday cake. It was up to him whether he did that tonight or not. But also to the rest of our families who support us in this work.
Awesome.
And with that, we are adjourned. And I